Chapter 1065. Su Junjie, who was scouting, was the first to discover danger. He suddenly discovered a raging flame in the forest in the distance. It was not unusual for a forest to be on fire, but what was unusual was that the flame did not cause any smoke when it burned. It was natural for a flame to cause smoke when it burned a tree. If there was no smoke when it burned, it meant that the flame was not a normal flame. It was most likely caused by Yuan Ko, because only Yuan Ko's flame could cause the result of burning without smoke. Everyone be on guard. Retreat immediately and stay away from this area. We'll go over this hill before moving forward. Shang Ye's team had long been beaten senseless by Yuan Ko. After discovering signs of Yuan Ko, their first reaction was to escape immediately. They absolutely did not want to come into direct contact with Yuan Ko. Although this method was very cowardly, it was an effective method. It was precisely by relying on this cowardly method that the team had successfully avoided many Yuan Kos. However, this time the danger was not so easy to avoid. Although the team was trying their best to retreat, the flame was advancing towards the team at a speed visible to the naked eye. Obviously, Yuan Ko had discovered the team. There's no other way. Everyone, prepare for battle. Shang Yi knew that there was no way to escape at this time, so he could only face it head-on. At the same time, Shang Yi secretly hoped that this Yuan Ko would be an easier Yuan Ko to deal with. He hoped that there would not be another flood dragon or dragon Yuan Ko. All the members of the team immediately released their sword ladies and let them rush in the direction of the flame, trying to position the battlefield at a safe distance of 1 kilometer away from them. Otherwise, if they let Yuan Ko get close to them, they were afraid that Yuan Ko would first kill the leader. This kind of fighting style made Gohan very uncomfortable. After all, when Gohan fought, he always carried the sword ladies and rushed forward. How could he let the sword ladies fight in front while he hid behind them a kilometer away? However, this was indeed the standard fighting style of ordinary sword bearers. After all, there were not many sword bearers in the world who were as powerful as Gohan. Once Yuan Ko got close, only death would await him. Lu Yunyue's sword maiden naturally followed the other sword maidens and rushed over. Lu Yunyue's sword maiden also shared her sword maiden's vision. After about 5 minutes, Gohan clearly felt Lu Yunyue's body tremble violently. It was clear that Lu Yunyue's sword maiden had already faced off against Yuan Ko. Yunyue, what kind of Yuan Ko is it this time? Gohan asked Lu Yunyue curiously. A very powerful Yuan Ko. Lu Yunyue bit her lips. He looks like an ordinary Western human, but his entire body is emitting raging flames, as if his entire body is burning. Fireman? Hearing this description, Gohan could not help but recall the Yuan Ko Fireman brand from League of Legends he met in the furnace of heaven and earth. However, Brand had already died by his hands, so this flaming Yuan Ko was obviously not Brand. So powerful! Shang Yi said that this is at least a flood dragon level Yuan Ko. Lu Yunyue's voice suddenly became anxious. It was clear that the battle on the other side had entered an extremely heated state. Gohan was very interested to see how the battle was going, but he could only think about it. At this moment, Gohan could not release any sword maiden. His flames are so powerful. My sword maiden touched it slightly, and the energy of my personal shield was reduced by 1/3. Lu Yunyue's expression became more and more nervous. Suddenly, Chu Hanming in the distance roared, "Go! Don't be a coward, kill this damn guy for me!" What happened? Gohan immediately asked curiously. Chu Hanming's sword maiden used her ultimate move. We have restricted Yuan Ko's mobility. Lu Yunyue replied, then immediately said, "It's a success. Zhuozong's Sun and Moon sword maiden has hit Yuan Ko's heart. However, this Yuan Ko does not seem to be afraid of this, and he does not seem to have suffered much damage." That's great. It turns out that this Yuan Ko is afraid of water. Su Junjie's aqua blue sword has done a great job. This Yuan Ko's flames have been greatly reduced by a large amount of purified water. I reckon that as long as his flames are completely extinguished, we can win." Through the battle report from Lu Yunye, Gohan barely understood the situation on the other side of the battle. The sword-bearers were at a disadvantage at the beginning, but they quickly discovered that this Yuan Ko was afraid of water. Therefore, Su Junjie, who shot out water attribute attacks, became the trump card of the battle. With the cooperation of his teammates, they gradually suppressed this Yuan Ko, and victory was already within reach. "Looks like I don't have to do anything." This thought just appeared in Gohan's mind. Suddenly, his expression tensed up. He reached out to grab Lu Yunye's clothes and pulled her into his embrace. Lu Yunye fell into Gohan's embrace. "What are you doing, you pervert?" Lu Yunye thought that Gohan wanted to take advantage of her. Just as she was about to scold Gohan, she suddenly saw the long sword in Gohan's hand stab through the void. A black figure was stabbed out from the void by Gohan. After taking a few steps back, she fell to the ground. This was a very wild and sexy woman. Her body was wrapped in a black tight suit, which outlined her graceful and seductive S-shaped figure. Apart from the dagger in her hand, just looking at her appearance and figure, she was simply a beauty bestowed by the heavens to mankind. This is Yuan Ko. Seeing this woman suddenly appear out of thin air, Lu Yunye was shocked. At the same time, she understood that Gohan didn't want to take advantage of her. Instead, he saved her life. Otherwise, she would have died under this woman's dagger. Meow. This beautiful Yuan Ko suddenly let out a cat's cry. Then, her body instantly disappeared into the air. Clearly, she had entered stealth mode again. And, as expected, it's a Yuan Ko who can turn invisible. Gohan muttered, "Hurry up and tell the others to send 1 or 2 sword ladies back. Otherwise, we will all die in the hands of this Yuan Ko." Although the battle just now happened beside them, everyone else was sharing their vision with their sword ladies. Other than Gohan and Lu Yunye, no one else noticed what happened beside them. Therefore, Lu Yunye needed to tell the others. "Oh!" Lu Yunye hurriedly nodded and loudly told the others that a Yuan Ko with the ability to turn invisible was hiding beside them. "What?" Lu Yunye's words shocked the others who were watching the battle. "What? Yunye, did you see wrongly? Or are you playing with us?" Li Xiangtian said doubtfully. "Shut your mouth. Even if everyone in the team is lying, Yunye won't lie." Shang Yi scolded Li Xiangtian. Li Xiangtian didn't say anything else. This was because he knew that Shang Yi was telling the truth. Lu Yunye was indeed the kind of person who would never lie. "Zuozong, Ryu, Chu Hanming, your sword ladies immediately retreat and protect our bodies. And the rest of you, don't share your vision with your sword ladies anymore. Be careful not to get your throats slit by that invisible assassin." Shang Yi was a qualified leader. Under his command, the other members of the team cut off their vision sharing with the sword ladies. They looked around vigilantly, afraid that an assassin would suddenly appear and kill them. However, this vigilance lasted for 3 minutes. During these 3 minutes, nothing happened. The invisible female assassin seemed to have completely disappeared. "I say, Yunye, are you playing with us?" Li Xiangtian said to Lu Yunye with dissatisfaction. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a sharp dagger appeared beside his neck. "Idiot!" Shang Yi, who was beside Li Xiangtian, immediately pushed Li Xiangtian. However, Li Xiangtian could not avoid the dagger. Li Xiangtian's personal armor shield trembled a few times. It was estimated that at least 60% of the personal armor shield's energy had disappeared. This wasn't even the result of a direct hit. It was just a slight graze from the opponent's dagger. A Flood Dragon Yuan Ko. This is another Flood Dragon Yuan Ko. Shang Yi instantly broke out in a cold sweat when he saw this. On the battlefield 1 kilometer away, all the sword maidens had expended a great deal of effort to hold back a Flood Dragon level bandit. However, they had never expected that at this moment, another flood dragon-level bandit who could turn invisible would appear beside them. At this time, they had lost the protection of all the sword ladies. When they thought about how their throats could be pierced by a flood dragon Yuan Ko's dagger at any time, everyone immediately shuddered. Li Xiangtian, in particular, had the worst reaction. After losing half of his personal shield, he immediately ordered his sword lady to return to his side to protect him. "What are you doing? Don't let your sword lady return." Shang Yi immediately scolded when he heard Li Xiangtian's order. Shang Yi had already drawn 2 sword ladies back. The battlefield on the other side had changed from an advantageous position to a balanced one. Both sides were just barely helping each other. If Li Xiangtian's sword lady returned, the battlefield on the other side would immediately collapse. "I don't care so much. I don't want to die here." Li Xiangtian was unmoved. He still ordered his sword lady to return. "Not good, that Yuan Ko is aiming at your captain." Gu Han expressionlessly watched this scene and coldly whispered in Lu Yunyue's ear. "What?" Lu Yunyue was shocked when she heard this. She ran away from Gu Han's side without saying anything and shouted, "Captain, be careful." Then, she threw herself onto Shang Ye's body. The two of them fell to the ground together. At the same time, the black figure flashed past Shang Ye's previous position. If it wasn't for Lu Yunyue's timely reaction, Shang Yi would have suffered the same fate as Li Xiangtian. "I remember now. I know who this Yuan Ko is," Gu Han suddenly said as he watched everything coldly. "What kind of Yuan Ko is this?" Yu, who was beside Gu Han, asked nervously. "They are the Flood Dragon Yuan Ko's Fantastic Four," Gu Han said calmly. Chapter 1066. Fantastic Four. Hearing this name, everyone fell into a deep shock. It was not because of how powerful the name represented, but because the name had a shallow meaning. There were 4 people in the Fantastic Four. Didn't this mean that there were 2 equally powerful Yuan Ko lurking nearby? After the shock, it was followed by despair. Thinking that there were 2 such powerful Flood Dragon level Yuan Ko, as long as these 2 Flood Dragon level Yuan Ko appeared, all the sword bearers present would probably die on the spot. No one would survive. "Melauer! Wake Melauer up!" Suddenly, Li Xiangtian pounced on the medical pod containing the famous sword-level swordsman, desperately pressing all the buttons on the medical pod, trying to find the button to force open and forcibly wake up Melauer, who was in the medical pod. Shang Yi and the others looked at Li Xiangtian's actions with disdain, but they did not stop Li Xiangtian, because at this moment, no one could save them except Melauer. Since Li Xiangtian was willing to be this cowardly idiot, why should they stop him? "It's useless." Unexpectedly, Gu Han interjected, "You may have never studied the medical pod. Once the medical pod enters the healing state, it will only open by itself after the treatment is completed. Or, Melauer's authorized friend can open the medical pod by force. Other than that, there is no other way, so don't waste your time." How could this be? Hearing Gu Han's words, Li Xiangtian suddenly fell to the ground, lowered his head and murmured, "We're going to die, we're all going to die, we can't live. By the way, there is one more thing I forgot to tell you." Gu Han added, "There are 4 good people in the Fantastic Four, but 2 of them died in the hands of a spirit sword-level swordsman 100 years ago, and the other 2 were lucky enough to escape, so you don't have to worry about the other 2 Flood Dragon level Yuan Ko hiding nearby." Li Xiangtian, who was lying on the ground, suddenly stood up and looked at Gu Han angrily. Why didn't you tell me such an important thing earlier? You made me. If I had told you earlier, how could I have seen such a shameless performance?" Gu Han's unceremonious sarcasm made Li Xiangtian even angrier. He rolled up his sleeves, ready to rush to Gu Han and beat him up. "Li Xiangtian, that's enough!" Captain Shang Yi suddenly roared. "Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Now there is a Flood Dragon level Yuan Ko lurking around us, and you still want to hurt your comrade? Let me tell you, Li Xiangtian, if you dare to touch Comrade Lung Qingqiu, I will leave you in this jungle, and you can walk back to Yuzhang City alone. Xiang Ye's anger immediately caused Li Xiangtian to shrink his head again. As one of the only two sword wielders in the team, Xiang Ye's words still carried a lot of weight. Li Xiangtian did not dare to disobey Xiang Yi. The reason why Xiang Yi helped Gohan reprimand Li Xiangtian at this time was not only because he was worried about Yuan Ko, who was still lurking around them, but also because of Gohan's personal terminal. At this time, everyone's personal terminal was damaged, only Gohan's personal terminal was still intact. In addition to being able to guide the team, it could also scan key information about Yuan Ko. For example, at this moment, if not for Gohan telling them about the Fantastic Four, they would not even know who their opponents were. Comrade Ling Qingqiu, do you know the details of these two Yuan Kos? Do you know what their weaknesses are? Xiang Yi immediately asked Gohan after reprimanding Li Xiangtian. Yes. Gohan nodded and said, these two Yuan Kos are called Thunderfire and Invisible Woman. Their abilities are as you can see. One is covered in flames and can shoot flames as a means of attack. The other could control light to make himself invisible. At the same time, he was good at all kinds of close combat. The dagger in his hand was also made of high-tech materials. It was indestructible and had extremely powerful attack power. However, the moment he attacked, he would expose his body. But as soon as she stops attacking, she will immediately go invisible again. Unlike other Yuan Ko who have the ability to go invisible, it takes a long time to go invisible again after leaving the invisible state. As for weaknesses, Thunderfire has two. The first is that he can't fight at full strength for too long in his flame form, and the second is that he is very afraid of water. As long as you find a way to consume his flames and extinguish them with water, he will return to his human form. At that time, he is just an ordinary person and can be easily killed. Invisible Woman's weakness is that she has no other abilities except for close combat and very powerful attack power. At the same time, her body is very fragile. Her defense is not even as good as an ordinary Tiger Yuan Ko. As long as you can attack her, everything will be easy. Gohan said in a few words the characteristics of these two Yuan Kos. P.S. Let me clarify here, according to Marvel's settings, the abilities of Thunderfire and Invisible Woman are far more than this. But according to Marvel's neurotic settings, these two people are sometimes strong enough to destroy the world, and sometimes weak enough to be killed by a child. In short, Marvel's own settings, the author does not like them, so he changed it. Marvel fans, please don't scold me, there will not be too many Marvel Yuan Kos in the future. Thank you. Xiang Yi nodded to Gohan to thank him, and then when he was thinking about how to deal with these two Yuan Kos, Su Junjie suddenly shouted, "Oh no! That Yuan Ko has left the battlefield and is rushing here." On the other side of the battlefield there was a major change. The flaming Thunderfire broke free from the other Sword Maiden's entanglement. "It's all your fault." Xiang Yi glared at Li Xiangtian fiercely. Li Xiangtian lowered his head and did not dare to speak. Obviously, it was because his Sword Maidens left their post and ran back in advance, causing the formation that entangled with Thunderfire to become chaotic, so Thunderfire escaped. "We must find a way to solve the danger of this Invisible Woman before Thunderfire arrives," Xiang Yi said quickly. "Does anyone have any ideas? Think quickly." The rest of the people immediately fell silent. They knew that Xiang Yi was very right, but how could they think of a way to deal with Invisible Woman? Originally, the best way to deal with Yuan Ko, who was invisible, was to use the Murderous Path Sword Maiden, who also had the ability to become invisible. However, the problem was that there was no Murderous Path Sword Maiden among all the Sword Maidens present, so the whole situation became extremely troublesome. The only person who remained calm was probably Gohan. Invisible Woman did not exist in the eyes of others, but in Gohan's eyes she was very clear. Gohan saw every move of the Invisible Woman. For example, at this time, the invisible woman had quietly moved to Shang Ye's side, and the dagger in her hand was about to cut Shang Ye's throat. Yunyue, catch this sword. Of course, Guhan could not watch the invisible woman kill Shang Yi. However, he did not want to expose the fact that he could see through the invisible woman's ability, so he suddenly threw the heavenly sword in his hand, which just happened to pass by the invisible woman. The invisible woman was so scared that she immediately took a few steps back, temporarily relieving Shang Yi of the danger. Guhan did not throw the heavenly sword to anyone else. Of course, he threw it to Lu Yunyue, who was standing next to Shang Yi. Lu Yunyue picked up the heavenly sword that Guhan had thrown away from the ground. She looked at Guhan in confusion and asked, "Lord Lingqingqiu, why did you give me your sword, maiden? Isn't your ancient sword rank sword maiden fighting? If you hold my sword maiden in your hand, you will at least have a weapon to resist when facing the invisible woman," Guhan explained with a slight smile. "No, I can't take this." Lu Yunyue immediately ran back to Guhan's side, preparing to return the heavenly sword to Guhan. "Lord Lingqingqiu, you only have this sword maiden left to protect yourself. If the invisible woman comes to kill you, what will you do?" "I'm fine." Guhan chuckled. The invisible woman's style has always been to kill those who pose the greatest threat first. "I'm just an ordinary person right now. The invisible woman won't kill me first, so it's more important to protect your lives first." "But..." Lu Yunyue was about to continue declining when she suddenly heard Lingqingqiu say something inexplicable. "Yunyue, didn't you tell me that you learned your family's ancestral sword technique? You can use it now. Who knows, you might be able to defeat the invisible woman." "What ancestral sword technique? Our family has never..." Lu Yunyue was about to refute when she suddenly heard Guhan's voice in her mind. She only heard Guhan whisper, "Don't say anything. I'm using the secret sound transmission technique. Only you can hear what I say now. Do whatever I tell you to do later. I guarantee that you can defeat the invisible woman and protect everyone's safety." Lu Yunyue stopped talking. She didn't know why Guhan said that as long as she did what he said, she could defeat the invisible woman. She also didn't know why Guhan had to use the secret sound transmission technique to talk to her and was unwilling to command her openly. However, Guhan must have his reasons for doing so. Lu Yunyue was not stupid enough to go against Guhan's words at this moment. "Walk forward 10 meters and then stab your left back." After Lu Yunyue calmed down a little, she heard Guhan's instructions in her mind. Although she was very confused, Lu Yunyue still followed Guhan's instructions and walked forward 10 meters, and then stabbed her sword to the left back. As a result, something magical happened. Lu Yunyue's sword was clearly stabbing into the void, but Lu Yunyue felt as if she had stabbed something soft. Then a black figure flew out of the void and fell heavily to the ground. The woman looked at Lu Yunyue in disbelief. Obviously, she didn't know how this weak human found her position. Of course, Lu Yunyue didn't know how Guhan found the invisible woman's position. Chapter 1067. The reason why the invisible woman was so powerful was that she was invisible. Unlike other Yuan Ko or Sword Nyangs, it took a long time for her to be invisible again after getting out of the invisible state. It only took 0.5 seconds to enter the invisible state again, which greatly improved the invisible woman's concealment. Therefore, when the invisible woman was knocked out of the invisible state by Lu Yunyue, she revealed a fierce look and glared at Lu Yunyue. Then, she disappeared again, making Shang Yi, who rushed over to kill the invisible woman, fail. "Yunyue, listen. Now the invisible woman has her eyes on you. You must strictly abide by my every command, otherwise your life will be in danger," Guhan said in Lu Yunyue's ear again, and Lu Yunyue nodded immediately. After the sword attack just now, she had a deep trust in Guhan's ability. "Take 3 steps forward, and then stab the side of your left leg with the sword." A few seconds later, Guhan's instructions appeared in Lu Yunyue's mind again, and Lu Yunyue immediately did it without hesitation. The result was naturally imaginable. The invisible woman was beaten out by Lu Yunye again. Roll back 3 times and stab the back of your right. Run to the tree on the left and then stab the stump. Squat down immediately and stab the top of your head with the sword. Shang Yi and others looked at Lu Yunye in front of them, stunned. The terrifying invisible woman had nowhere to hide in front of Lu Yunye. She would often be found by Lu Yunye within a few seconds of being invisible, and then she would be stabbed out of the invisible state. No one expected that the person who saved everyone at the critical moment would be the youngest and weakest Lu Yunye in the team. They didn't expect that Lu Yunye had the ability to see through the invisible state, and her swordsmanship was so exquisite that it was not inferior to some sword Nyang's. The invisible woman without the invisible ability was just an ordinary person. After several stabs by Lu Yunye, all parts of her body were full of bloody wounds. At the same time, she was constantly panting. Even the speed of being invisible again was much slower than before. At this time, the 2 sword maidens that Shang Yi had ordered to return had already returned to the team. Shang Yi immediately said, "You guys quickly cooperate with Yunye to kill this Yuan Ko." With the cooperation of the 2 sword ladies, the battle became more convenient. As long as Lu Yunye knocked the invisible woman out of her invisible state, the 2 sword ladies would immediately rush up and slash at the invisible woman. Under the attack of 2 genuine sword ladies, the invisible woman, whose defense ability was exactly the same as that of an ordinary person, was no match for Yuan Ko. Soon, one of his arms was cut off by the sword lady. This time, the invisible woman's face was no longer fierce. Instead, it was full of pain and struggle. She spent a lot of effort to enter the invisible state again. This invisible woman is preparing to escape. Immediately run in the direction of the boulder on your left. When I tell you to strike, immediately stab forward. Understand? Gohan said in Lu Yunye's ear. Lu Yunye nodded vigorously and began running according to Gohan's instructions. When she was less than 5 meters away from the boulder, she suddenly heard Gohan shout in her mind. "Do it!" Lu Yunye stabbed the heavenly sword in her hand forward without hesitation. Then, she heard the sound of a sharp sword entering flesh. The invisible woman's panicked and desperate face appeared in front of Lu Yunye. However, this time, the invisible woman didn't have the ability to escape. Lu Yunye's heavenly sword pierced deep into her heart and nailed her to the boulder. "You love!" At the last moment of her life, the invisible woman spat out a few inexplicable words. However, before she could finish speaking, her head turned to the side, and she died. The dimensional vortex immediately appeared above the boulder, completely proving the invisible woman's death. The invisible woman, a WRM grade Yuan Ko, had died at the hands of Lu Yunye, an ancient sword wielder. I killed her? Seeing the death of the WRM grade Yuan Ko and the dimensional vortex that appeared above her head, Lu Yunye still found it very surreal. She still couldn't believe that she could kill a WRM grade Yuan Ko. It seems like I haven't killed a WRM grade Yuan Ko in real life when I was at the ancient sword grade. Upon seeing this scene, Gohan smiled and sighed inwardly. After Gohan became an ancient sword wielder, he had only fought a few times in the Miling mountain range. The Yuan Ko he had killed were at most ghost and soul Yuan Ko. Although Gohan had fought the powerful Medusa and Reina Takasaka in the Miling mountain range, one of them was an Ian Yuan Ko, while the other was a mixed-blood Yuan Ko. Neither of them could be considered a WRM grade Yuan Ko. Therefore, Gohan had never killed a WRM grade Yuan Ko in real life when he was at the ancient sword grade. From the looks of it, Gohan had helped Lu Yunye kill the WRM grade Yuan Ko, making up for the small regret in his heart. Mashiro attacked. Don't waste the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Just as Lu Yunye was immersed in killing the WRM grade Yuan Ko, Li Xiangtian, who was hiding at the side, immediately ordered his sword lady, who had just escaped from the battlefield. Obviously, Li Xiangtian had his eyes on the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. This was a dimensional vortex that appeared after the death of a WRM grade Yuan Ko. There were at least 600 to 700 quarks of sword essence in it. If Li Xiangtian's sword lady could absorb the sword essence in this dimensional vortex, he would be able to meet the sword essence requirement of a treasured sword wielder. How could Li Xiangtian not be tempted? Seeing Li Xiangtian's sword lady suddenly run toward the dimensional vortex, the other sword wielders immediately reacted. What was Li Xiangtian trying to do? Immediately, a sword wielder cursed, "Li Xiangtian, you shameless scoundrel." While some were cursing Li Xiangtian, others were learning from him. For example, the Zhua Zong Ryu's sword lady immediately followed behind Li Xiangtian's sword lady and also flew toward the dimensional vortex, preparing to absorb the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Shameless scoundrel! At some point in time, Gohan had walked to Lu Yunyue's side and used his body to block the two sword ladies who couldn't wait to enter the dimensional vortex to absorb the sword essence. Enough. You two are dignified sword ladies. How dare you do such a shameless thing? Gohan reprimanded the two sword ladies loudly. Don't forget the rules of sword wielders. The dimensional vortex belongs to whoever kills Yuan Ko. This Yuan Ko was killed by Lu Yunyue alone. What right do you have to absorb the sword elements in this dimensional vortex? Lung, get lost. What right do you, a cripple, have to block me? Li Xiangtian immediately turned anxious as he rushed over and said to his sword lady, "Ignore this fellow. Just charge straight over." Li Xiangtian's true white sword nodded and was prepared to flash past Gohan. However, just as she moved to the right, she realized that Gohan had also moved to the right, blocking her path. True white sword frowned and rapidly charged to the left, preparing to shake off Gohan from the left. However, she never expected that Gohan would be one step faster than her. He still blocked her from the dimensional vortex. Kick this fellow away. Li Xiangtian, who was behind him, grew anxious and prepared to use force on Gohan. However, at that moment, Shang Yi and his sword lady came over and slapped Li Xiangtian in the face. "You piece of trash, get lost!" "You!" Li Xiangtian glared at Shang Yi venomously. As an ancient sword wielder, how could he be a match for a treasure sword wielder? In addition, the other sword wielders looked at him with disdain. Li Xiangtian could only grit his teeth and order his sword lady to return. At that moment, all the sword ladies, including Lu Yunyue's ancient sword lady, had returned. Gohan turned to Lu Yunyue and said, "That's enough. Let your sword lady absorb the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. Otherwise, this dimensional vortex will disappear in a few seconds." "Okay." Lu Yunyue nodded, but she continued, "If not for Lords Waryu and Lord Chu Hanming's help, I wouldn't have been able to kill this sword lady so quickly. Therefore, I hope to share this dimensional vortex with these two lords' sword ladies." It was Captain Shang Yi and Su Junjie who held back the other Yuan Ko and protected the safety of this battlefield. "It's impossible for me to kill this Yuan Ko, so I'm willing to share this dimensional vortex with Captain Shang Yi and Su Junjie," Lu Yunyue said again. However, Li Xiangtian's name was not among the names she read. "You killed this Yuan Ko. You can split it however you want. It has nothing to do with me." Gohan walked away after saying that. Then, Lu Yunyue and the other four sword wielders shared the sword essence in the dimensional vortex. I wonder if this girl is really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. Such a thought suddenly surfaced in Gohan's mind as he looked at the smiling Shang Yi, Lu Yunyue, and company. Through a dimensional vortex, Lu Yunyue had successfully made the other sword wielders with combat strength owe her a huge favor. It was worth noting that Lu Yunyue didn't let Li Xiangtian share the dimensional vortex. According to Lu Yunyue, Li Xiangtian's sword lady had also contributed and fought with Thunderflame. However, Lu Yunyue didn't even mention his name. This made Gohan nod inwardly. For a narrow-minded person like Li Xiangtian, as long as you offended him once, he would remember this hatred no matter how well you treated him in the future. Such a person was a jackal that couldn't be fed. Why did she want him to share the sword essence in the dimensional vortex? Was she going to let him deal with her when he was stronger? If Lu Yunye had allowed Li Xiangtian to share the sword essence in the dimensional vortex like a saint, Gohan would have looked down on Lu Yunye and wouldn't have helped her like today. By the way, where's Yuan Ko? When all the sword essence in the dimensional vortex was absorbed, the others realized that Thunder Flame seemed to have disappeared. He probably fled after discovering that his companions were dead. Shang Yi said indifferently. As long as it was a WRM or above, Yuan Ko would analyze his situation and escape from dangerous enemies. Therefore, it wasn't strange for him to escape after discovering that his teammates were dead. Just like that, the team once again took a step forward. However, compared to before, Lu Yunye's status was very different. Although everyone seemed to treat Lu Yunye well, they actually looked down on her deep down. After all, she was very weak. However, when Lu Yunye displayed her ability to see through invisibility, Lu Yunye's position became completely different. Everyone's attitude towards Lu Yunye was obviously much better. Many times, everyone would take the initiative to ask for Lu Yunye's opinion. However, Lu Yunye didn't get complacent because of this. She obviously knew why she was respected. Therefore, in the dead of the night, Lu Yunye suddenly knelt in front of Gohan and said, "Lord Ling Qingqiu, please take Yunye as your disciple." Chapter 1068. Accept a disciple? Hearing Lu Yunye's request, Gohan smiled bitterly. "I'm already a cripple. I'm not qualified to be your master." "No." Lu Yunye shook her head firmly. "Lord Ling Qingqiu, you're not a cripple. Otherwise, all of us would have died here today. In fact, it was you who saved us. Get up, I won't accept you as a disciple." Gohan helped Lu Yunye up. "One of my disciples is in trouble now. I won't accept any other disciple before rescuing her." "But Lord Ling Qingqiu, are you willing to take away all your swordsmanship and not leave anything behind?" Lu Yunye said with some excitement. "Yunye is not talented, but I'm willing to inherit swordsmanship on behalf of Master, to make Master famous, and to make Master's name known throughout the world. If I want to make a name for myself, why would I need your help?" Gohan smiled, and he couldn't help but recall what happened 3 years ago. 3 years ago, he also knelt in front of Wuzhang Shifang and asked Wuzhang Shifang to accept him as a disciple. In the end, Wuzhang Shifang rejected him. Therefore, Gohan came up with a wicked idea and said to Lu Yunye, "If you really want to be my disciple, it's not impossible. It's just that I never accept students without talent. If you can get first place in this year's Octagon tournament, then I can accept you as a disciple." First place in the Octagon tournament. Lu Yunye's face stiffened when she heard Gohan's request, and she said pitifully, "Lord Ling Qingqiu, it's not like you don't know that since Lord Gohan 3 years ago, our Yuzhang city has been at the bottom of the Octagon tournament for years. How can I get first place in the Octagon tournament?" "Really? It's been at the bottom for 3 years in a row. In the 3 years that Gohan was in Shanhai Pass, he had never cared about the Octagon tournament. Therefore, when he heard that Yuzhang city had been at the bottom for 3 years in a row, he just felt unhappy. If that's the case, then all the more reason for you to get first place." Gohan rubbed his nose. "How about this? I won't take you as my disciple now, but I can teach you some sword techniques. You'll be traveling during the day and practicing with me at night. I remember that the 8 Academies assembly should have ended last month. There are still 11 months left. I am confident that I can help you be reborn." 3 years ago, after the August conference ended, Gohan hurriedly came to Shanhai Pass for relief within a day or two. Therefore, Gohan speculated that this year's 8 Academies assembly would end within a month, so he still had 11 months. "Lord Ling Qingqiu, don't you know?" Hearing Ling Qingqiu's words, Lu Yinyue's face showed a puzzled expression. This year, because of Lord Ingzheng, the 8 Academies Assembly was held 6 months in advance. There are only 5 months left before the next 8 Academies Assembly. This Ingzheng has never done anything good. Guhan muttered, 5 months is actually enough. As long as you follow me and learn seriously, the first place is not far from you. But Lord, the number of participants in the 8 Academies Assembly was personally decided by the Dean. I heard that this year's number of participants has already been decided. It's impossible for the Dean to let me, a newcomer who just became a sword-bearer a month ago, go on stage. Lu Yunyue said again. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? Gohan's face showed a trace of displeasure. Since I let you participate in the 8 Academies Assembly, I am confident that I can get you a place. You just need to follow me and practice swordsmanship. From now on, if you say another word of nonsense, don't even think about worshipping me as your master. Yes, Lord Ling Qingqiu. Lu Yunyue had no choice but to shut her mouth. Guhan had always been a man of action. He would do what he said. That night, Guhan began to teach Lu Yunyue some basics of swordsmanship. Although Guhan had accepted Lu Shihua as a disciple before, Guhan had accepted her more because he saw the potential of Lu Shihua to become an emperor sword-level sword-bearer. He only taught her swordsmanship for a few days and then stopped teaching her carefully. He only took out a few minutes every day to ask Lu Shihua about her progress, correct her mistakes, and point out the direction to move forward. That was all. Among Guhan's 3 most powerful swordsmanship techniques, 9 swords of mysterious heaven, 3 green lotus swords, and chaos sword technique, other than teaching Lu Shihua some basic techniques in 9 swords of mysterious heaven, he did not pass on the essence of these 3 swordsmanship techniques to her. However, the treatment that Lu Yunyue received was completely different. Because she had lost all her sword essence and one of her legs, Guhan could do nothing but teach Lu Yunyue swordsmanship. In the end, Guhan taught her very seriously. Lu Yunyue was a great swordsmanship genius. She could understand many swordsmanship techniques with just a few pointers. In just a few short nights, Lu Yunyue's swordsmanship had improved by a terrifying amount. On the 5th night that Guhan taught her, Lu Yunyue used Guhan's heavenly sword to spar with her sword lady. In the end, she defeated her sword lady. This was an extremely amazing achievement. Even though Lu Yunyue's sword lady was an unremarkable man-made sword lady, she had 70 to 80% of her original swordsmanship. After all, every sword lady's swordsmanship was accumulated through hundreds of battles. Even if a normal human trained hard for 30 years, they would not be able to defeat a sword lady. This was why there were so few sword masters. In the end, in just 5 nights, Lu Yunyue defeated her sword lady in a spar. Of course, this was only in terms of spar. As they dissected one move at a time, Lu Yunyue could easily think about what sword technique to use to defeat her opponent. However, this was completely different in actual combat. Lu Yunyue's opponent would not give her the chance to think about her next move. Thus, in actual combat, Lu Yunyue was still not her sword lady's match. However, Guhan believed that in a month at most, Lu Yunyue would be able to completely defeat her sword lady. This was something that Guhan had trained for 2 years to achieve. As the days passed, the team got closer and closer to the end of the treasure trove. The number of Yuan Ko they encountered in their daily battles also increased. Under Guhan's deliberate orders, Lu Yunyue no longer released her sword lady. Instead, she used her sword lady to fight different Yuan Kos. In the beginning, Lu Yunyue had almost died at the hands of Yuan Ko due to her lack of actual combat experience. As her combat experience continued to increase, Lu Yunyue became more and more proficient. Lu Yunyue could also fight ordinary mouse and tiger Yuan Kos without Guhan's command. These changes in Lu Yunyue were also seen by the other sword-bearers in the team. When they first met Lu Yunyue, she was just a complete novice. She could not even do something as simple as releasing her sword lady. She was the weakest existence in the team, and no one took her seriously. However, at this moment, Lu Yunye could hold her sword lady and fight with those Yuan-Kos. She even won repeatedly. She was not like them, who could only hide in a hidden place and command their sword lady to fight from afar. The difference in strength was obvious. It was foreseeable that after a period of time, Lu Yunye would be able to completely leave them behind. She would go from someone who looked up to them to someone who they had to look up to. This made the other sword-bearers envious and jealous. Of course, they knew that it was impossible for Lu Yunye's comprehension ability to comprehend such amazing swordsmanship. Instead, there was an expert secretly teaching her. Lu Yunye had such a shocking change after meeting Gohan. Furthermore, Lu Yunye and Gohan were always together. Even a fool could guess that the expert behind the scenes was undoubtedly Gohan. At this moment, the other sword-bearers were so regretful that they beat their chests and stamped their feet. They saw that Gohan's purple palace was destroyed and thought that Gohan was already useless. They did not even think of treating him with respect and courtesy. In the end, Lu Yunye, this silly girl, ran over and even shared her precious food with him. Originally, they thought that Lu Yunye was a ridiculous saint who had a burden. They were prepared to see Lu Yunye make a fool of herself. In the end, they did not expect Lu Yunye to pick up a big treasure. She had received the full guidance of an expert and her strength had increased by a terrifying amount. Therefore, the other sword-bearers in the team also took out their treasured food to curry favor with Gohan. They wanted to become Gohan's disciple as well. However, the detestable thing was that although Gohan had eaten all of their food, he did not mention anything about teaching. This made the sword-bearers beat their chests and stamp their feet in anger, but they could not do anything to Gohan. According to the map, the treasure is buried on the mountain in front of us. On the 12th day after Gohan joined the team finally arrived at the foot of the treasure mountain that was marked on the map. According to the map, the treasure was in a cave halfway up the mountain. However, this cave was extremely hidden and was surrounded by layers of vines. Ordinary people would not be able to find this cave. However, at midnight, when the moon rose into the sky, the place where the moonlight shone the brightest would be the place where the treasure was buried. Everyone could follow the directions of the moonlight to find the final treasure. Since they had to rely on the moonlight to guide them, the team could only set up camp at the foot of the mountain and wait until midnight. Because they were only one step away from the treasure, all the team members became very excited. After everyone ate and drank to their heart's content, they began to chat happily. At first, these people's topics were topics that Gohan was not interested in. However, at a certain moment, this sentence suddenly popped out of Su Junjie's mouth. "Did you know? The night before our personal terminals were damaged, I received a push notification. The Sword Committee issued a wanted order for our Yuzhong City's sword-bearer, Gohan." It was this sentence that instantly made Gohan's ears perk up. Chapter 1069. Gohan? You're talking about our Yuzhong City's previous sword pavilion master, Gohan? Chu Hanming exclaimed. Besides Gohan, who else could Gohan be? Su Junjie snorted. Not only is he the previous sword pavilion master, but he is also the master of the current sword pavilion master. By the way, have you seen the live TV broadcast? How powerful was Gohan in court at that time? He was just a famous sword-level swordsman, but even a spiritual sword-level swordsman was no match for him. And his mouth made everyone speechless. He won the final debate and was acquitted. Gohan was innocent in the first place. Chu Hanming said loudly. Those who tried to put Gohan on trial are crazy. If it weren't for Gohan, the whole of Yuzhong City might not even exist. They actually made things difficult for Gohan for a useless old coffin. Is an old man worth more than a top swordsman? Those who tried to put Gohan on trial are all B****. I despise people like that the most. Hey! You can't say that. Li Xiangtian took over the conversation. The life of a swordsman is a human life, and the life of an ordinary person is also a human life. That old man did it to protect the property of Yuzhong City. How can his life be less important than Gohan's? That's good. So the whole of Yuzhong City should be buried with this old man. Chu Hanming's anger rose. He waved his fists excitedly, looking like he wanted to fight someone. Li Xiangtian was so scared that he quickly shut his mouth. In terms of physique, 3 Li Xiangtians added together were not as strong as one Chu Hanming. Come on, why did you use your fists to talk about your brother? Shang Yi reprimanded Chu Hanming. What do you mean by talking about others? Maybe the people around us will encounter this kind of situation in the future. Now that we can't really argue, which side will we stand on? Chu Hanming looked at Shang Yi and asked, Captain, tell me, between Gohan and that old man, which side do you think you'll be on? Shang Yi rolled his eyes at Chu Hanming and did not answer his question directly. Instead, he said, I voted for Gohan. Shang Yi was obviously on Chu Hanming's side, so Chu Hanming asked Su Junjie, Junjie, who did you vote for back then? I wasn't a sword bearer back then, so I couldn't be bothered to vote. But if I had to say it, I would still stand on Gohan's side. Yuzhong City might still exist without Gohan, but the casualties would definitely be more severe. From a purely personal perspective, I support Gohan, Su Junjie replied with a smile. Yu, what do you think? Chu Hanming asked the usually silent Yu. Gohan. Yu's reply was clean and direct, in line with his personality. What about you, Qin Liang? Chu Hanming turned to Qin Liang. When I voted for that old man. Finally, there was a sword bearer who stood on the opposite side of Gohan. However, Qin Liang immediately changed the topic and said, It's just that I wasn't a sword bearer back then. As an ordinary person, of course I would stand on the side of ordinary people. Now that I'm a sword bearer, I naturally have to stand on the side of the sword bearer. So, if I were to vote now, I would definitely vote for Gohan. Look at your butt. Chu Hanming muttered, then turned to Li Xiangtian. You actually dared to talk back to me just now. You must have voted against it. F*CKU. I'm not from Yuzhong City. How could I have the right to vote? Li Xiangtian sneered. Only then did Chu Hanming remember that Li Xiangtian was a sword bearer from Yanjing City. It was just that he had always lived in Yuzhong City. So, in reality, Li Xiangtian did not have the right to vote. However, even if we sympathize with that old man, we still have to sit on the sword bearer's side. If I were given the chance to vote, I would definitely vote for Gohan. I've studied that matter. In fact, Gohan didn't need to kill the old man at that time. He just needed to get someone to drive the old man away. It wouldn't have taken much time. At that time, Gohan had only killed them to vent the anger in his heart. Whether he died or not did not affect the overall situation of Yuzhong City. Before Chu Hanming could ask him, Zhuoryu took the initiative to speak. So, you think that Gohan is wrong? Chu Hanming was a little happy to hear Zhuoryu say this. After all, if everyone agreed, then there would be no fun in talking about this topic. I didn't say that Gohan is wrong. I just said that it doesn't matter whether the old man dies or not. Zhuoryu suddenly pulled out the sword in his hand. It was a Fusang sword. Gohan had heard from Lu Yunue that this sword was called Kondo Bunzai. It was a typical Fusang Tang sword. If I were Gohan, I would also kill that old man. Those who stand in my way deserve to die. It turned out that Zhuoryu was a cruel and merciless guy. Yunue, what do you say? Chu Hanming finally asked Lu Yunue. Can I not answer this question? Lu Yunue smiled bitterly. The old man who died was my uncle. Although we are not related by blood, we are relative. Hungry, then I won't ask you. Chu Hanming's face stiffened. He never thought that Lu Yunue was a blood relative of that old man. Gohan, who was sitting beside Lu Yunue, also did not expect this. The so-called reincarnation of heaven and earth, retribution. He didn't expect that his involvement with that old man hadn't ended yet. The heavens had actually sent that old man's grandniece to him. What was even more ridiculous was that he had accepted his grandniece as his disciple. The things that happened in this world were really too wonderful. It suddenly caught him off guard. Senior Leng Qingqiu, what do you think? Seeing that he couldn't get the answer he wanted from Lu Yunue, Chu Hanming could only ask Leng Qingqiu again. To Gohan, this was a very strange question. Hearing these people's comments about him, Gohan's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He didn't expect that everyone would stand on his side. Even that annoyingly Xiangtian changed his mind in the end. Gohan could tell that none of them were lying. They were all speaking from the bottom of their hearts. They were truly standing on Gohan's side. I can't say it's right, but I can't say it's wrong either. Gohan revealed a meaningful expression. He only did what he thought was right. As for how others evaluate him, it doesn't matter to him. He has always done things with a clear conscience. You speak as if you know that, Gohan guy. Although Li Xiangtian stood on Gohan's side in the end, he was still very dissatisfied with Leng Qingqiu. Thus, he couldn't help but mock. Since you're so familiar with this Gohan, then do you have a photo of you and Gohan that you can show us? I don't have a photo with Gohan, and that's not something that can be said by people who are familiar with each other. Gohan retorted without any trace of politeness. Right. Suddenly, Su Junjie patted his head. Actually, I always felt that Senior Leng Qingqiu looked a little familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen him before. Today, when I was talking about Lord Gohan, I suddenly remembered that Senior Leng Qingqiu looked a little similar to Lord Gohan. Is that so? Why don't I think so? When Chu Hanming heard Su Junjie's words, he immediately sized up Gohan carefully, then shook his head and said, No, not at all. Senior Leng Qingqiu, please forgive this junior for being blunt, but Lord Gohan is much more handsome than you. Is that so? Gohan finally couldn't help but laugh. I'm indeed not as handsome as him. Alright, Su Junjie, what did you say about that, Gohan? Why did the Sword Committee put him on the wanted list? It's all this Chu Hanming's fault. He changed the topic. Su Junjie glared at Chu Hanming, then continued. Didn't that Lord Gohan later go to Shanhai Pass to guard, and even became the guardian of Taiying Garrison, together with Lord Ingzheng and Lord Liunyanling, killed all the great magi, and destroyed Zhu Wu's blood essence, completely ending the war of attrition in Shanhai Pass, and made a great contribution to mankind? Before Su Junjie could finish, Li Xiangtian hurriedly interrupted. What great contribution, that has nothing to do with Gohan. This is all Lord Ingzheng's credit. Gohan is just a lucky spectator. What does destroying Zhu Wu's blood essence have to do with him? TSK, even if the main credit belongs to Lord Ingzheng, Lord Ingzheng himself said that it was Lord Gohan's brilliant plan that helped him find the Wu people's nest. Without Lord Gohan's plan, how could Lord Ingzheng possibly destroy Zhu Wu's blood essence? Su Junjie retorted discontentedly. However, only Gohan himself knew the bitterness in his words. It was true that Ingzheng did not take all the credit, but he had put Gohan's credit on the plan. He only said that it was Gohan who came up with the idea of using his medical cabin as bait to find the Wu people's nest, but all the credit in the underground palace was taken by Ingzheng. Because of the agreement between Gohan and Ingzheng, he had never refuted Ingzheng's statement. In the end, Gohan was completely marginalized and became just a decoration. Of course, all of this was within Gohan's expectations. He had long since stopped caring about these things. I heard that the day Lord Mellauer was injured was the day Lord Gohan left Shanhai Pass after 3 years. However, considering that the Wu people still have a Grand Witch, Chang'e, in hiding, and that a drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence has yet to be found, the Sword Union still hoped that there would be a powerful swordsman guarding Shanhai Pass to deal with sudden crises. Therefore, they decided to let Gohan guard Shanhai Pass for 3 years. In the end, Lord Gohan was unwilling. Not only did he injure the executive director of Shanghai Pass, who came to deliver the order, he even defeated the sword spirit of Gue Palace, who came to stop him. In the end, Su Junjie suddenly paused to keep everyone in suspense. In the end, what happened? Hurry up and tell us. Suddenly, a female voice came from behind them. Everyone was startled, but their faces were immediately filled with excitement. Lord Mellauer, you've finally woken up. It turned out that the famous swordsman, Mellauer, had finally woken up from the medical cabin. Chapter 1070. This was the first time Gohan had seen the only famed swordsman in the team, Mellauer. She was a woman with obvious Western features. She had a tall figure, a plump opie, and a head of pure gold hair. This was a rare sight in the Western headquarter cities, where the Chinese bloodline was almost completely integrated. Gohan was very curious as to why such a Western woman would suddenly request to join the team. Who is this? Mellauer also noticed Gohan's presence and immediately frowned. He is a famed swordsman we saved along the way, Lord Lung Qingqiu. However, because his Zifu was destroyed by Yuan Ko, he can only temporarily move with us. Lu Yunye immediately explained. A famed swordsman? Mellauer looked at Gohan and asked, Where are your 3 sword maidens? Apart from the treasured sword maidens, the other sword maidens were placed in my dimensional pocket before their Zifu was destroyed. Now that I have lost my sword essence, I can no longer open my dimensional pocket. How can I retrieve my sword maidens? Gohan explained. Then can you lend me your treasured sword maidens? Mellauer asked again. Gohan hesitated for a moment. His appearance had changed over the past 3 years. Coupled with his sloppy appearance, it was understandable that no one could recognize him. However, his heaven-reliant sword was different. His heaven-reliant sword was the number 1 sword maiden among the treasured sword maidens. These inexperienced brats might not be able to recognize it, but an experienced famed swordsman like Mellauer might be able to. However, after thinking about it carefully, Gohan handed the heaven-reliant sword to the other party. If he was recognized, then so be it. Was he supposed to be afraid of these famed sword maidens? It really is a treasured sword. Mellauer looked at the heaven-reliant sword and nodded. He then casually threw the sword back to Gohan and proudly said, However, it looks like it's just a mediocre sword maiden among the treasured sword maidens. It's no big deal. Looks like this woman does not recognize the heaven-reliant sword either. Gohan quietly let out a sigh of relief, and Mellauer was no longer interested in talking to Gohan, so he turned to Su Junjie to continue talking about Gohan. This Lord Gohan is truly formidable and also very vicious. Not only did he defeat the sword spirit of the Gue Hall as a famous sword wielder, he even stripped him naked and threw him in front of the Yen Jing Feng Yun TV station's live show, Exploring the Ruins. He threw the sword spirit of the Gue Hall out in front of everyone in Beijing. The whole process was broadcasted live by the Yen Jing Feng Yun TV station. Although the program's signal will be cut off very soon, there's no guarantee that they will record it. In the end, the entire video was recorded and uploaded to the internet. Now, the sword spirit of the Gue Palace has become a complete joke. He has even been given the nickname 12th Prince. 12th Prince? What does this nickname mean? Why would he be given such a nickname? Chu Hanming asked in confusion. When the sword spirit of the Gue Hall was thrown from the sky, his body was completely naked without any mosaic. Everything was shown on the TV. One had to know that even the signal of the live broadcast television was 8640p. This could be said to be extremely clear. In the end, someone analyzed the video and concluded that even if the sword spirit of the Gue Hall's little brother was fully erect, it would only be 12 centimeters tall. In the end, the sword spirit of the Gue Hall was given the nickname 12th Prince. Ha 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 ha. Su Junjie couldn't help but burst into laughter after he finished speaking. Then, the others in the team also burst into laughter. The atmosphere suddenly became very cheerful. You guys said that the sword spirit of the Guay Hall is a dignified spiritual sword rank swordsman. Many ancient sword rank and famed sword rank swordsmen were scared to death when they heard the name of the sword spirit of the Guay Hall. You guys have only become a swordsman in the past 2 years, so you don't know that a few years ago, every ancient sword rank and famed sword rank swordsman was most afraid to hear the name of the sword spirit of the Guay Hall. They were afraid that they would be chosen by the sword spirit of the Guay Hall and be dragged to the Shanghai Pass, where the death rate was as high as 40%. Who would have thought that such a great man would end up like this? It's so funny. Ha ha. Enough! Before Su Junjie finished laughing, Melauer suddenly slapped Su Junjie's head hard and sent him flying. He was so scared that he was stunned. Do you think a lowly guy like you can mock the Crown Prince of London? Melauer cursed. Only then did the others remember that Melauer was the sword-bearer of the city of London. The sword spirit of the Guay Hall was the pride of London. Why would Melauer react so violently that he would slap the laughing Su Junjie away? This Gohan, he has balls. Just you wait. I, Melauer, will teach him a lesson with my own hands. I will let him know that London is not a place that can be humiliated so easily. Melauer said loudly. Lord Gohan can defeat the sword spirit of the Guay Hall. What right do you, a mere famed sword-rank swordsman, have to seek revenge? Be careful that he doesn't strip you naked and throw you out. All the Yuzhong sword-rank swordsmen said to themselves. They were very protective of their own people. As long as they were from the same base city, they would naturally treat them as one of their own. They might fight when there were no outsiders, but they would still protect their own people in front of outsiders. However, Melauer was a famed sword-rank swordsman. No one present could defeat her. They could only say this in their minds. What happened after that? What happened next? Melauer had just sent Su Junjie flying, so he immediately asked Su Junjie. Su Junjie was gritting his teeth in hatred, but he had to force a smile and continued. The sword spirit of the Guay Hall was of noble character and unquestionable integrity. He said that he didn't want to hold Gohan responsible, and he wouldn't send a warrant for the London sword-rank swordsman to seek revenge on Gohan. However, Lord Ingzheng has publicly stated that Gohan's behavior is an insult to the Sword Committee Association, and it has destroyed the harmonious relationship between London, Yanjing, and Yuzhong City. Therefore, such behavior must be severely punished. He has called on all sword-bearers to immediately report Gohan's whereabouts once they find him, or simply capture him and hand him over to the Sword Committee Association. That way, they will be rewarded greatly by the Sword Committee Association. At least the Sword Committee and Lord Ingzheng knew the gravity of the matter and upheld justice. Otherwise, our Crown Prince might have been generous enough to let this bastard go. Melauer said hatefully. However, after thinking about it, he revealed a doubtful expression. But this Gohan is a famed sword-rank swordsman, and he even defeated the Crown Prince. I'm afraid that even a spiritual sword-rank swordsman would find it difficult to deal with him. Only an immortal sword-rank swordsman could capture him. Why would the Sword Committee send all the swordsmen to capture him? Ordinary sword-rank swordsmen are no match for him. I heard that Gohan was seriously injured during the battle with the sword spirit of the Guay Hall. His mind was sealed by the sword spirit of the Guay Hall, so he's just an ordinary person now. At the same time, according to the analysis of the route he took, he should have returned to Yuzhong City. He might be hiding somewhere in Yuzhong City at this moment, so the Sword Committee called for everyone to capture him, Su Junjie explained. That's what I said. How could the Crown Prince be defeated by this damned guy so easily? As expected, he didn't have a good ending either. Melauer nodded in satisfaction after hearing Su Junjie's words. She then asked, "Where are we now?" After knowing that the party had arrived at the foot of the mountain where the treasure was hidden, and that they only needed to wait until the moon hung high in the sky to find the location of the treasure, she was very satisfied and found a place to sleep. Although she had just crawled out of the medical pod, and although she had slept in the medical pod for more than 10 days, it seemed that Miss Millar was still asleep. The others were happy that Mellauer did not disturb them. Just like that, the sky gradually darkened until it was so dark that they could not see their own fingers in front of them. Originally, Gohan still had to teach Lu Yunhue swordsmanship that night, but at this moment, Lu Yunhue obviously did not have the mood to continue practicing. Gohan also understood this, so he did not say much. He waited with the others for dawn to come. During this time, Mellauer woke up again and joined the waiting team. It was finally dawn. When a new day began, the bright moonlight shone on the mountain peak in the distance. At this moment, everyone suddenly saw a small dot suddenly light up at the top of the mountain. It looked like someone had turned on a light bulb in the mountain. There must be something reflecting light there, Shangyi said. When the moonlight shines from a certain angle, it will cause that thing to reflect light. That's why we suddenly saw something light up there. I understand now. This is the hint that Lu Yunyue's ancestor gave to her descendant. The location of the light must be the location where the treasure is buried. There's no mistake, Li Xiangtian said excitedly. Great. That was great. We finally found the location of the treasure. Everyone cheered in unison. Only Shang Yi remained calm. He picked up a professional camera and took photos from various angles. At the same time, he compared the photos with the mountain photos taken during the day. Through this method, he determined the location of the light spot. Otherwise, even if he remembered the location of the light spot, once the sky brightened, it would be impossible to determine the location of the light spot with the naked eye. Sure enough, after less than 3 minutes, as the angle of the moonlight changed, the light spot immediately dimmed and completely disappeared as if it had never existed before. Their goal had been achieved. After arranging the candidates for the night watch, everyone fell asleep one after another. Of course, Gohan was no exception. However, when he was half asleep, Gohan suddenly felt a biting cold murderous aura approaching him. However, Gohan did not immediately get up. Instead, he pretended to be still asleep. When a cold sword was placed on his neck, Gohan pretended to wake up. Lord Gohan, I didn't expect to meet you here. I've worn out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find you by chance. This was Mellauer's voice. It seemed that this woman had completely pretended not to recognize Gohan during the day. In fact, she had already recognized Gohan. Chapter 1071. Alright, since you recognize me, come out and talk with me. Don't wake up the others. Gohan didn't pretend to be asleep and directly pushed the sword away from his neck, looking like he didn't care about Mellauer at all. Don't move, we'll talk here. Mellauer looked at him and immediately put the sword back. If you have the ability, then kill me. If you don't, then follow me. These little guys are quite fun, don't ruin my fun, Gohan said coldly. After that, Gohan didn't care and limped into the depths of the forest. Mellauer was so angry that her nose was crooked, but just like Gohan said, she couldn't do anything to Gohan and could only follow behind Gohan into the depths of the forest. Speak. What do you want with a sword on my neck in the middle of the night? What do you want? Gohan asked coldly. I want your life. Mellauer replied in the same cold tone. Don't say such useless nonsense in front of me. If you really want to kill me, you could have done it when your sword was on my neck. Why follow me all the way here? Gohan bluntly pierced through Mellauer's thoughts. It's really boring to talk to people like you. Mellauer sighed. Alright, the Xian Yuan sword is in your hands. As long as you give me the Xian Yuan sword, I'll let you live. At the same time, I won't tell anyone that you are here. That's a good deal. Can save my life. Gohan smiled and then raised the dimensional pocket in his hand. But the problem is that the Xian Yuan sword is now in my dimensional pocket. Without my sword essence, Even if your Longsher Jiandi personally takes action, it would be impossible to open this dimensional pocket. But the problem is that my Zifu has been sealed by Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Otherwise, why would I hang out with these little guys to eat and drink? Since I can't open the dimensional pocket, how can I give you the Xian Yuan sword? This. Melauer instantly froze. Obviously, she didn't expect to face such a problem. She only thought that now that Gohan's Zifu was sealed, his fighting strength had become that of an ordinary person. She could easily deal with him, but she didn't expect that when the other party became an ordinary person, the Xian Yuan sword would also be completely sealed. This time, Melauer was completely at a loss. How about after the seal on my Zifu is lifted, I will open the dimensional pocket and take out the Xian Yuan sword and give it to you? Guhan said very sincerely. Do you think I'm a fool? If the seal on your Z Palace is removed, then how could you give me the Xian Yuan sword? I'll thank the heavens if you don't come looking for trouble with me. Melauer hatefully said. It seemed that this child was not completely stupid. But in this way, Melauer really didn't know how to get the Xian Yuan sword from Gohan's dimensional pocket. As a result, the two of them stood in the cold night wind for about 10 minutes. Gohan was now just an ordinary person, so when the cold wind blew, he suddenly couldn't bear it. He waved his hand and said, You take your time to think, I'm going to sleep first. Come find me when you think about it. Stop right there. Who gave you permission to leave? Melauer once again stood in front of Gohan, but because of his hasty action, their bodies collided. Melauer's pair of opium pies directly hit Gohan's chest. Not knowing if it was because of the elasticity, the result was that the opium pies actually bounced Melauer back. Seeing Melauer's action, Gohan's eyes lit up and said, I have a good idea. Why don't you and I do it here? If you can get pregnant with my child, I will definitely not let my child down. In the future, when the seal of the Zifu is lifted, I will also give the Xian Yuan sword to my child. Since becoming a swordsman, Gohan's character has indeed changed a lot. If it was in the beginning, Gohan would never say such a lewd joke. But at this time, a problem arose. It was a joke in Gohan's mouth, but in Melauer's ears, it was not a joke. The woman suddenly smiled. This is an excellent idea. Why didn't I think of it? After Melauer finished speaking, he took out a Simmons from his dimensional pocket and placed it on the ground. Then, without hesitation, he took off his clothes and soon stood naked in front of Gohan. At this time of the polar night, Gohan could only see Melauer's body through the little bit of moonlight in the sky. It was such a little bit of moonlight, but it made Melauer's body particularly attractive and beautiful. Her snow-white skin reflected the faint moonlight, which was as cute as a mousse cake. Coupled with the bright red strawberry on top of the cake, it made people want to pounce on it and take a bite then ravage it. Woman, you are too shameless, Gohan said absent-mindedly. Since fully understanding the joy of love, Gohan could no longer be as unmoved as when he was a child. Come on, my Lord Gohan, in the face of such a beautiful woman, don't tell me you are not moved? Melauer said coquettishly. You can't be so stupid to think that you can get the Xian Yuan sword by sleeping with me. Gohan looked at Melauer playfully. Let's talk about the Xian Yuan sword later. You have successfully ignited the flame in my body. Lord Gohan, if you don't believe me, you can touch it. Then, Melauer grabbed Gohan's left hand and touched his lower body. Sure enough, it was wet, as if he had wet the bed. We blondes are not like Chinese women who are shy and shy. For us, sex is just an interesting pastime. We will do it when we are in the mood. As long as we are handsome and have a big guy, that's all. Melauer smiled foolishly, then grabbed Gohan's lower body with one hand, revealing a satisfied smile. This time, Gohan finally understood. The collision just now had knocked out the flame of desire in Melauer's body. He simply put the matter of the Xian Yuan sword aside and solved the problem of his own desire first. All right. In fact, it had been more than 10 days since Gohan had tasted the taste of a man and a woman. His lower body had already become as hard as iron. Regardless of Melauer's position, he directly took off his clothes and rolled with Melauer. After fighting for about an hour, Melauer finally surrendered to Gohan. "You really are a monster. Maybe I'll have to sleep in the medical cabin again." Melauer was completely exhausted from the hour-long battle. "What, do you still want my Xian Yuan sword?" Gohan squeezed Melauer's bun. It was King big and bouncy, even better than when Mayun's. Sure enough, the innate advantage of the blonde race was too strong. "Of course I want it." Melauer smiled foolishly and grabbed Gohan's Xian Yuan sword. "But I know that you are actually just playing with me. With my body, of course I can't get your Xian Yuan sword. So I prepared another gift for Lord Gohan. I hope Lord Gohan will kindly accept it." "You have another gift?" Gohan's brows instantly furrowed. He saw Melauer clap his hands, and an artificial sword mistress with a dull expression grabbed a figure and walked to Gohan's side. Gohan was shocked when he saw this. The person who was captured was none other than Lu Yunye. At this time, Lu Yunye looked at the naked Gohan and Melauer with a flushed face. She couldn't help but spit on Melauer's body and scolded, "Adulterous couple." "Little sister, you are wrong." Melauer smiled tenderly. "Your good master is not married, and I am not married either. We are both free people. You can call us adulterous couple." "How do you know he is my master?" Lu Yunye asked in surprise. "Your swordsmanship has improved so fast that anyone with a discerning eye can see it. I only need to ask others to know." Melauer smiled again. "Okay, less nonsense. Little sister, you have been peeking at us for an hour. Are you itching to see? Do you want to try it yourself? This is a top-notch Xianyuan sword." It turned out that Lu Yunye had discovered Gohan when he left. As a result, she had been secretly following behind Gohan. As a result, she naturally watched the whole process as if it was an action movie. "No, you shameless bitch, stay away from me. I am not as cheap as you to seduce my master." Lu Yunye struggled and said, "Little girl, your mouth is very hard. I wonder how your mouth is like below." Melauer suddenly said naughtily, "How about this, if your mouth is dry, I will let you go. But if it is as salivating as my mouth below, then I will make your dream come true. How about it? You!" Lu Yunye didn't manage to finish her curse. Her whole body let out a groan. Obviously, her vital part was already in someone's hands. After a dozen seconds, Melauer raised his right hand high with a proud face. Under the moonlight, Melauer's right hand shone with a sparkling light. "It seems that our little girl can't wait to get ready." Melauer sent Lu Yunye to Gohan and smiled. "Dear, after eating my feast, how about a refreshing dessert?" "You're crazy." Gohan stood up and was ready to leave. But the moment he stood up, he suddenly felt dizzy and fainted in an instant. I guess you don't know that before I became a swordsman I was a famous pharmacist in London," Melauer said to Lu Yunye proudly. "This Gohan is really treacherous. He didn't even kiss me the whole time. He was afraid that he would eat something dirty. But he didn't think that he didn't have to use his mouth to drug me. It's the same with that greedy Xianyuan sword. Why are you telling me this?" Lu Yunye, who was under Melauer's control, instantly panicked. "I want to say that dealing with a little girl like you doesn't need to be so troublesome." Melauer directly pinched Lu Yunye's chin and forced her to open her mouth. Then, he directly threw a small blue pill in. "As long as you eat it, you will definitely be more feminine than me just now. You understand men's hearts." Melauer smiled knowingly and then stood up from the Simmons. He took out a black camera from his dimensional pocket. "I didn't expect that I would also be a photographer." Chapter 1072. It's a pity that this is impossible. Just when Melauer thought that his plan had succeeded, The originally unconscious Gohan suddenly opened his eyes and slapped Lu Yunyue's chest. Before the blue pill could be digested, Gohan directly slapped it out and held it in his hand. "Take it, don't let anyone feed you this thing again," Gohan said seriously as he placed the blue pill in Lu Yunyue's hand. "Impossible!" Mellower let out a scream of disbelief. "You were clearly hit by my Viagra 3000, how could you wake up now? This medicine is much weaker than the effects of the Green Lotus 3 swords. If I, Gohan, don't want a woman, then no matter how tempting she is, it's meaningless to me." Gohan snorted, looked at the camera in Mellower's hand and smiled. "But your plan is quite innovative, you want to take a video to threaten me. But you're wrong about one thing. If you use Lu Yunyue's life to threaten me, then maybe I will give in. But if you use this video to threaten me, then you're making a fool of yourself. Didn't you say it just now? I, Gohan, don't have a wife, and Lu Yunyue isn't married either. What's the big deal if I marry Lu Yunyue? Do you want to threaten me with this little video?" Gohan said disdainfully, but in Lu Yunyue's ears, it had a different meaning. "Lord Ling Qingqiu said he wants to marry me." Thinking of this, Lu Yunyue couldn't help but jump up and down. "Humph. Men all talk pretty, but when it comes to real action, they're all coward." Mellower spat, turned around, and directly left, no longer pressing Gohan about the Xianyuan sword. She couldn't kill Gohan, and she couldn't take the Xianyuan sword from Gohan's hand, so she could only leave. "Master, are you really Lord Gohan? Are you really not called Ling Qingqiu?" As soon as Mellower left, Lu Yunyue hurriedly asked. "Yes, I am Gohan." Gohan nodded. "So what Su Junjie and the others said yesterday was true? Were those things really done by you, Master?" Lu Yunyue hurriedly asked again. "You can say that I did it." Although the feud between him and the sword spirit of the Sea Hall was very complicated, Su Junjie was right in terms of facts. Whatever. Disciple believes that Master is definitely innocent. Even if Master really did it, Master must have his own difficulties. What Master did is definitely right. Disciple will always support Master. Lu Yunyue said loudly. "Things of the fairies." Gohan smiled and returned to the team with Lu Yunyue. The night passed uneventfully. When the sun rose high in the sky the next morning, the team began to climb the tall mountain according to the location of the treasure they had determined last night. Mellower did not choose to expose Gohan's identity. He behaved the same as before, as if he did not recognize that Ling Qingqiu was Gohan from beginning to end. The others, on the other hand, had completely forgotten about yesterday's topic. Their minds were completely focused on the treasure. No one knew how many years it had been since anyone climbed this mountain, or how many years had it been since anyone or Yuenko climbed it. All the mountain paths were blocked by lush bushes, and most of the paths were steep cliffs. Every step the team took required a great deal of effort. Strong people like Shang Yi and Chu Hanming could not help but gasp for breath after climbing about a third of the way up. They looked as if they had exhausted all their strength. Mellower, on the other hand, did not show any signs of fatigue. However, she was a famed swordswoman. Her physique was different from the other swordswoman. However, what the others did not understand was that Ling Qingqiu was clearly an ordinary person. Moreover, her left leg was seriously injured and had not fully recovered. However, Ling Qingqiu appeared to be calmer than everyone else. She did not even have the slightest bit of shortness of breath. It was as if climbing these mountain paths was not difficult at all. Only Lu Yunyue, who was beside Gohan, knew that when they were climbing the mountain, Gohan had been constantly giving Lu Yunyue pointers on how to use strength through secret sound transmission. This allowed Lu Yunyue to use the mountain's own terrain to climb up. The consumption of strength was only 2 or 3 times that of normal walking. Therefore, Lu Yunyue was still full of energy after climbing up the mountain path. Lu Yunyue, who was only given a few pointers by Gohan, was able to do this. Then one could imagine Gohan's ability to borrow strength. The mountain path was no different from flat ground in front of Gohan. Therefore, Gohan did not expend much energy at all. At this rate, we'll have to stay halfway up the mountain for another night, Chu Hanming said with some worry. It was not that they did not want to waste the night, but the mountain was very steep and there were very few places to set up camp. If they slept in a place like this, it would not be impossible for them to roll down the mountain in the middle of the night. We can't stay here for another night. Ever since we started climbing this mountain, I have a bad feeling in my heart. It's like there is something terrifying hidden in this mountain. We must find the treasure today, and then use the paraglider to descend the mountain tonight. We can't stay here for a moment longer, Shang Yi said with a head full of sweat. However, this sweat was not the warm sweat that came from exercising, but the cold sweat that came from fright. Shang Ye's words made everyone instantly silent. This was because they all felt the same as Shang Yi. There seemed to be something ominous in this mountain. However, no one was willing to directly expose this matter. If they were the only one who felt this way, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Master? I suddenly have an ominous premonition. Is there really any danger in here? Lu Yunye asked Gohan nervously as well. Of course there is danger. No matter which story it is, the treasure represents wealth, but it also represents great danger. Who knows, there might be a U-level Yuan Ko waiting for us, Gohan said with a smile. What? Lu Yunye was shocked. This is the treasure left behind by our Lu family's ancestor. How could there be danger in there? Then wouldn't the ancestor want to kill us descendants? It's impossible for him to kill you descendants, but it's natural for him to kill us outsiders. Gohan smiled. Okay, you don't have to worry. When the car reaches the mountain, there will be a way out. We are already halfway up the mountain. Of course we can't go down. Let's continue forward. After a short rest, Shang Yi suddenly walked in front of Gohan. He first respectfully bowed to Gohan, then with a pleading tone, he said, Lord Lingqingqiu, please think of the big picture and tell us the method to go up the mountain. We really can't stay halfway up the mountain for a night. What method to go up the mountain? What do you mean by that? I don't understand. Gohan turned his head. Lord, you don't have to pretend anymore. All of us can see that the reason why Yunyue's strength has increased so much along the way is all because of your secret guidance. And just now when we were climbing up the mountain, only you and Yu didn't expend too much energy. We really aren't fools, otherwise Lord Lingqingqiu wouldn't have followed us smoothly all the way down. Don't tell me you really want us to speak openly? Shang Ye's words were very interesting and worth carefully pondering. You are very good. Gohan nodded. When we return to Yuzhang City, you will be my subordinate. I will give you a big way out. Gohan patted Shang Ye's shoulder and said, Thank you, Lord. Shang Ye's face revealed an excited expression as he cupped his fist toward Gohan. Okay. Everyone follow me. Watch every step I take. If any one of you falls down the mountain because of a mistake, I won't be responsible. Gohan shouted loudly. He nimbly jumped on a rock with one leg, and his whole body rose half a meter. Then, his injured leg just happened to touch another protruding rock, and he instantly rose up. The whole process was easy and smooth, as if he was walking on flat ground. Master, wait for me. Lu Yunye quickly followed behind Gohan, and walked in the same position as Gohan. Everyone follow one by one. Watch the steps of the person in front. Absolutely do not make a mistake. Shang Yi shouted loudly and followed the former's steps. He didn't dare to take a wrong step. Although the others muttered some unpleasant words, everyone, including Meller and Li Xiangtian, followed Shang Ye's instructions and climbed up the same rock one by one. And so, something miraculous happened. Even though the path ahead was even steeper than the cliff they had climbed before, they didn't feel any strain as they followed the path Gohan had taken. Instead, there was a faint elastic force beneath their feet that bounced them up, and the energy they expended was more than 10 times less than before. When everyone finally arrived at the location they saw last night, They were surprised to find that it had only been 40 minutes since they rested, but the distance they had traveled was more than 3 times the distance they had traveled in the previous 4 hours. Although they felt that they had exhausted a lot of their stamina, they still had most of their stamina left, unlike when they rested earlier, when they were completely exhausted. Strange. Why can't I find the entrance? The place they stopped at was a small platform on the cliff. It was about 100 square meters. It was a very small platform. It was reasonable to say that if there was an entrance to a cave around this platform, it would be impossible to escape everyone's eyes. However, after everyone cleared all the vines around the platform, they found that there wasn't even a mouse hole on the cliff. It was impossible for there to be an entrance for people to enter or exit. Are we in the wrong place? Li Xiangtian anxiously scratched his head. Impossible, I've checked it again and again. This is the right place, Shang Yi said with certainty. Look at this. Zhuangriyu suddenly found something. Everyone quickly gathered around him and found that Zhuangriyu had embedded a crystal-clear diamond somewhere on the cliff. This diamond seemed to have been cut by a divine knife. It had more than 100 different parallel surfaces. It was as beautiful as a celestial object. Whether it was Lu Yunhue or Meller, the moment they saw this diamond, their eyes couldn't help but shine. They couldn't wait to hang this diamond around their necks. I get it. This is the source of light we saw last night. It was this diamond that reflected the moonlight. Shang Yi suddenly realized. Yes, the entrance is here. There must be some hidden mechanism here. Let's look carefully. With the appearance of this diamond, everyone immediately went all out to search. However, after a full 2 hours had passed and the sun was gradually setting, they still didn't find anything. Chapter 1073. Lu Yunhue, do you know who is the stupidest person in this world? Looking at these sword-wielders aimlessly searching the surrounding rock walls, Gohan said in a very mocking tone. Lu Yunhue didn't say anything. How could she continue such a topic? How could she still be human? Lord Ling Qingqiu, did you discover something? Hearing Gohan say this, not only was Shang Yi not angry, but his face was full of surprise. Because since Gohan said this, it was obvious that he had found the problem. I didn't discover anything, but I only know that many people only care about the things in front of them and don't know how to look under their feet. Only when their feet are on the ground can they move forward firmly. Gohan said very meaningfully. Thank you, Lord Ling Qingqiu. Shang Yi wasn't stupid. After hearing Gohan's words, he immediately let everyone search the surrounding rocks and began to search the platform under his feet. Sure enough, there was an extremely important discovery. Zhuangriyu used the sword in his hand to continuously stab the inside of the platform. In the end, at a corner, he found that there was a hollow under his feet. There was a hollow hole with a diameter of more than half a meter. Everyone quickly dug up the ground at that location and found a deep entrance. Li Xiangtian was about to jump in impatiently, but he was stopped by Shang Yi. What's the hurry? The space inside has been sealed for hundreds of years. Who knows if there are any dangerous things inside? Let me put a robot in first. After saying that, Shang Yi took out a small hovering robot from his dimensional pocket. This hovering robot could hover in the air without making a sound. At the same time, it could clearly see everything inside without any light shining on it. At the same time, it could also detect the composition of the air in the space. It was a necessary advance for exploring various ruins. Many dangerous ruins were discovered because of the existence of this robot, and a large number of lives were saved. Under Shang Ye's control, this hovering robot gradually went deeper into the hole. Soon, the scene inside the hole was transmitted to Shang Ye's personal terminal and was projected by Shang Yi. The tunnel was very long, and there was a sharp turn every 10 meters. The hovercraft flew for about 3,000 meters before finally passing through the long tunnel and arriving at a large space. The space was completely dark, but the special camera could still clearly show the situation inside the cave. Unexpectedly, this long cave was actually connected to an incomparably large space. The robot's scanning system did a simple scan and found that this cave was actually connected to a huge space that was about 5,000 meters long, 1,000 meters wide, and 800 meters high. Such a space had almost hollowed out half of the hill. However, Gohan had seen such a space once before. It was in the training array in Chongyang Mountain. Even now, as long as Gohan gently rubbed the ring on his finger, he could still instantly return to the training array. P.S. How shameful, the author actually forgot about this trap. I only remembered it when a reader reminded me. Ah, how shameful. The space inside this cave was similar to the training space of Chongyang Mountain. However, the training space of Chongyang Mountain was much larger than this one. It was about 10 times the size of this cave. Wow! This space is so big. There must be countless treasures inside. Li Xiangtian couldn't help but exclaim in excitement when he saw the image captured by the hovercraft. These treasures must be huge for such a huge space to be able to contain them. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. There's actually nothing inside, Shang Yi said with a solemn expression. Under the rapid scanning of the hovering robots, the entire three-dimensional image gradually appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was surprised to find that this huge space was actually empty. There was nothing inside. This is impossible, Li Xiangtian exclaimed. This space was clearly dug out by someone. Why is there nothing inside? Could it be that someone took it away in advance? Melauer looked at Lu Yunue and asked, could it be that your ancestors took away all the treasures inside in advance? What you brought us here is just a treasure that has been emptied. Hearing Melauer's words, everyone immediately felt that it made sense. Then, they all looked at Lu Yunue. If Lu Yunue's ancestors had really emptied this place, then they would definitely not let Lu Yunue go. 4 of their companions had died. How much hardship did they have to go through to finally reach this place? In the end, what they got was an empty shell. At this moment, these people almost wanted to eat Lu Yunue alive. Look at what that is. Just when everyone's eyes were about to devour Lu Yunue, Su Junjie suddenly pointed to the center of the 3D map and said. They quickly cast their gazes over and found that there was actually a small raised platform in the center. However, this small platform was too small compared to the huge space. If they didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to discover the existence of this small platform. Shang Yi controlled the hovercraft to fly to the small platform. The small platform was about a meter high. There was only a light red silk pouch on the small platform. It looked no different from an ordinary brocade pouch. What? It's just a cloth bag, Li Xiangtian said in disappointment. What do you know? Chu Hanming snorted disdainfully. Do you think that the ancient people were like us now? That they used advanced technology to create dimensional pockets? At that time, the ancient people's technology wasn't advanced. They couldn't use these precious materials to a high degree like us. Therefore, they could only use these dimensional materials in the simplest way. The dimensional pocket they created was just a small brocade pouch. It's really scary to be uneducated. You. Li Xiangtian's face turned red from Chu Hanming's words. However, after a long time, he couldn't even say a word in rebuttal. It was really scary to be uneducated. Don't talk back to others. Looking at the brocade pouch on the small platform, Gohan couldn't help but think of the few-dimensional brocade pouches that I Ching had given him. They were also antiques from 800 years ago. The dimensional pockets of that era indeed looked like brocade pouches. I understand now. Su Junjie patted his head hard and suddenly said, Who said that the treasure must be piled on the ground? Since there is a dimensional pocket, then put it in it. All the treasure must be in this dimensional pocket. This discovery immediately raised everyone's spirit. For safety's sake, Shang Yi ordered the hovering robot to scan the entire space several times. After confirming that there was indeed no danger, and the air was only a little lacking in oxygen, they could move freely with an oxygen tank. Finally, everyone entered the cave. Unexpectedly, this long cave was not easy to walk. The direction of the cave was continuously upward, but the soil on both sides of the cave seemed to be compressed and became very smooth. If one was not careful, one would slip and slide down. However, in front of the treasure, these difficulties were naturally nothing. After about half an hour, everyone finally passed through the long cave and arrived at the huge space that the hover robot had seen. There was nothing much to say. Everyone, including Gohan, immediately rushed to the small platform in the middle. At this time, the advantage of speed showed itself. As a famed sword-level swordsman, Mellauer was the fastest. He rushed to the small platform ahead of everyone else. Not good, that Mellauer won't take the dimensional brocade bag for himself, right? Li Xiangtian exclaimed. Everyone's heart sank when they heard this. One by one, they desperately ran to the center and finally arrived at the side of the small platform while panting. Mellauer, who arrived first, didn't take the dimensional brocade bag as Li Xiangtian had guessed. Of course, this wasn't because Mellauer was a noble person and kept his promise. Instead, it was because there was an invisible barrier protecting the outside of the brocade bag. Mellauer used his sword mistress to hack at the barrier a few times but couldn't break it. He could only stop there and wait for the others to arrive. Everyone quickly discovered the existence of the energy shield. Everyone tried to force their way through the energy shield, but they all returned in failure. Everyone, don't waste your energy. Yunyue's ancestor was at least an immortal sword-level swordsman. The method he set up is not something that we insignificant ancient sword-level, treasure sword-level, or famed sword-level swordsmen can break. Everyone should think of another way to open the barrier. Shang Yi stopped everyone from attacking the barrier. If this barrier was really set up by an immortal sword-level swordsman, then besides Gohan, whose mind palace wasn't sealed, no one else had the ability to open it. I remember now. There was this sentence on the map left behind by the ancestor. Lu Yunyue took out the treasure map from her dimensional pocket and pointed at the words written in the corner. It says, "Only my bloodline can open the treasure trove." Does it mean that my blood can only be used to open the treasure trove? That makes sense. That must be it. Mellauer clapped his hands and didn't wait for Lu Yunyue to say anything. He took out his sword mistress and cut Lu Yunyue's finger. Lu Yunyue was scared silly. Although she was willing to contribute her blood, she didn't want to be forced to launch a surprise attack. If Mellauer had malicious intentions, wouldn't he have killed her in one strike? Unfortunately, the others didn't have any objections to Mellauer's actions. Instead, they kept urging Lu Yunyue to drip her blood on the barrier. Lu Yunyue had no choice but to put on an act. The moment Lu Yunyue's blood came into contact with the barrier, the entire barrier disappeared. While everyone was cheering for this, the dimensional brocade pouch that had been quietly lying on the ground floated up by itself. The mouth of the brocade pouch instantly opened to the size of a bathtub. Before everyone could react, it swallowed Lu Yunyue in one gulp and returned to its small form, returning to the small platform. Chapter 1074. Not good. Yunyue has been eaten by this dimensional sachet. Let's quickly destroy this sachet and save Yunyue. Seeing Lu Yunyue being swallowed by the dimensional sachet, Chu Hanming immediately said anxiously. He was even prepared to forcefully destroy the dimensional sachet. Don't waste your energy. Only Spirit Sword tier and above sword bearers can destroy this dimensional brocade pouch with their own strength. We aren't even famed sword tier sword bearers, so we can't do anything to this dimensional brocade pouch. You should save yourself some trouble, Yu said with an extremely stiff expression. In fact, it wasn't just Yu. Everyone else had the same expression as Yu. They looked stiff as if someone had died in their family. What's wrong with you guys? A teammate was eaten by a sachet. Not only are you guys indifferent, but you also have such ugly expressions. It's as if you can't wait for Lu Yunhue to die. Are you guys still human? Chu Hanming said loudly with dissatisfaction. Can't you tell, you idiot? We've all been tricked by Lu Yunhue. Hearing Chu Hanming's voice, Li Xiangtian was infuriated. He said with a face full of resentment, Lu Yunhue didn't encounter any danger at all. This is a dimensional sachet left behind by their ancestor. If he wants to harm someone, he would harm us outsiders. How could he harm his descendant? What do you mean? Why don't I understand? Chu Hanming still had a blank look on his face. You really are an idiot. Li Xiangtian was helpless. He could only explain in detail. This dimensional sachet swallowed Lu Yunhue not to harm her. On the contrary, it's to protect her. Lu Yunhue's ancestor must have left some mechanism. As long as his descendant comes, she will be protected through the dimensional sachet. That's not right. The dimensional space in the dimensional sachet is not something a living person can survive in. Lu Yunhue will only die if she enters the dimensional sachet, okay? Chu Hanming retorted. What if this dimensional sachet hides a solidified void gate? Li Xiangtian said as if he had seen a stupid pig. Hearing Li Xiangtian's words, Chu Hanming reacted. You're saying that this dimensional sachet hides a solidified void gate? Lu Yunhue was transferred to another place by this solidified void gate? That's right. That was it. The moment the pouch was opened, I felt the power of the void. This is definitely the opening of a void gate. Mellauer added. The so-called solidified void door was a void door that an immortal sword wielder could use special methods to solidify and hide in a dimensional pocket or dimensional pouch. In any case, it was fine as long as it was in a dimensional equipment. This was because only dimensional equipment could ensure that the power of the void door would not dissipate and could continue to exist. When the sword-bearer encountered danger, the sword-bearer could use this solidified void gate to immediately teleport to a predetermined location, thereby avoiding fatal danger. It was a rather powerful life-saving method. It was similar to the green ring on Gahan's hand, which could allow him to return to the trial array at any time. However, the solidified void door was a one-time use item. Once the dimensional pouch was opened, the void door would immediately open as well. In less than 10 seconds, the void door would close and disappear forever. Therefore, a specialized dimensional pouch had to be used to store the solidified void door. More importantly, solidifying a void door required a huge price. Firstly, the immortal sword wielder would permanently lose 1 million quarks of sword essence. Secondly, a large amount of precious materials and a regional king's dimensional crystal would be consumed. With these conditions combined, most immortal sword wielder would not solidify a void door in their lifetime. Emperor sword wielder would usually only leave 1 or 2 solidified void doors for their descendants. There must be some kind of mechanism on this dimensional brocade pouch. When a member of Lu Yunhue's family opens the protective air barrier, the mechanism on the dimensional brocade pouch will immediately be triggered. Then, it will take away its descendant through the solidified void gate and teleport them to another space. Shang Yi said with a livid expression. That's why we've all been played by that girl. Mellauer's nose and eyebrows were twisted together in anger. That girl must have known this a long time ago. That's why she was willing to hand over the treasure map and recruit idiots like us to escort her here. Once she's here, she only needs to trigger the mechanism in the pouch and she'll be transported to another space. Her ancestors' treasures must be hidden in that space. She's probably counting the treasures left behind by her ancestors right now. As for us idiots who have been used by her, we can only die from anger. Did everyone understand what was going on? What Mellauer meant was that the whole invitation to share the treasure was a scam. Lu Yunhue wanted to use the sword-bearers to escort her safely to the location of the treasure. Then, she would use the mechanism designed by her ancestor to teleport herself to the true location of the treasure. She would enjoy all the treasure by herself, and the sword-bearers were just idiots who worked for her. How could this be? Chu Hanming sat down in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he had been used by the seemingly innocent Lu Yunye. He muttered to himself in disbelief, "Then what about her family? Isn't she afraid that we'll take revenge on her family? I remember that Lu Yunye's immediate family is already dead." Su Junjie continued, "Then it makes sense. Since her biological parents are already dead, Lu Yunye doesn't care about those relatives at all. I believe that these relatives have bullied this child who has lost her parents. So, if we really went to find trouble with her family, I'm afraid that not only will Lu Yunye not feel sad, she'll even clap her hands in joy." That's right. As for herself, with so many resources and treasures left behind by her ancestors, would she be afraid that she won't be able to cultivate to the treasured sword or famed sword rank? At the very least, she can spend some money to hire a powerful sword-bearer to protect her. When that time comes, we useless ancient and treasured sword-bearers won't be able to do anything to her. This is why she only invited ancient and treasured sword-bearers. Because we're the weakest, she won't have to worry about revenge in the future. It's a perfect plan," Li Xiangtian added as he followed behind Su Junjie. In just a few words, Lu Yunye's image had changed from that of a pure, kind, and adorable little girl to that of a sinister, vicious, and greedy woman. "Lord Ling Qingqiu, why haven't you said anything? And your expression hasn't changed in the slightest. Could it be that you already knew about Lu Yunye's hidden plot?" Melauer suddenly turned his head and said to Guhan behind him. Because Guhan and Lu Yunye's relationship was the closest, everyone could see that they had already become a pair of master and disciple. Therefore, Melauer's words were extremely tempting and persuasive. Everyone couldn't help but believe that Guhan had already known about Lu Yunye's plan. The reason my expression hasn't changed is because I believe in Lu Yunye's character. She's definitely not a sinister and cunning person. Everything you've said is just speculation. There's no concrete evidence to prove that Lu Yunye knew about the trap on the dimensional pouch. I believe that she also doesn't know about the trap on the dimensional pouch. Guhan slowly said. "Of course. You're her master, of course you'll believe her. You're in cahoots." Melauer placed his sword on Guhan's neck for the third time. "Then I'll use your life to threaten Lu Yunye. Let's see if your good disciple respects you as her master and if she's willing to jump out for you." Sigh. Guhan pushed the sword away for the third time. "That's why I said that you're too fixated on what's in front of you. Didn't I say that I'll show you what's beneath your feet?" Hearing Guhan's words, everyone subconsciously looked down. They were stunned to find that there were several rows of small words engraved on the ground near the small platform. However, everyone's attention was on the dimensional pouch, so no one noticed the row of words beneath their feet. "This is the seal of the Thunder and Lightning Dragon, Pale Kamui, Divine Might Goddess Nai Kan na Kamui. Only those of my captivating red bloodline can receive the protection of the void. Everyone else, please leave quickly and do not touch the dimensional pouch. Otherwise, the terrifying Thunder and Lightning Dragon will break the seal and awaken." Li Xiangtian read the words aloud and his face turned pale with fright. Lightning Dragon, Pale Kamui, Mighty Kamui, Connor Kamui. Although he had never heard of these three names before, each one sounded more terrifying than the other. Even a fool could tell that in addition to the treasures of Lu Yunye's ancestor, there was also an extremely terrifying Yuanko sealed here. Lightning Dragon? Connor? Guhan recalled these names but realized that they didn't exist in any of the information. It seemed like this was a Yuan-ko that had never appeared in the human world. "You should leave this place," Guhan said. "This isn't a place you should stay. You still have a chance of survival if you leave now. If you insist on staying here, only death awaits you." I won't leave." Li Xiangtian, who had wanted to say that he would leave now, looked at the dimensional pouch on the small platform and couldn't help but say it. It hadn't been easy for them to come to this treasure trove, but not only did they not obtain anything, they even had to flee like stray dogs. This was something a greedy person like Li Xiangtian couldn't accept no matter what. In fact, it wasn't just Li Xiangtian. The rest of the team couldn't accept this fact either. Although they couldn't help but wait here, they felt that Lu Yunyue might appear again after obtaining the treasure. They wouldn't be satisfied if they didn't wait for at least half a month. Moreover, who knew if the words written on the ground were real or fake? Perhaps they were just lies used to deceive people. Therefore, after a few minutes, no one had any intention of leaving this space. If you can stay, I'll leave. Gohan sighed and walked towards the cave entrance. He left this dangerous sealed area without looking back. These people had been blinded by greed. Since that was the case, he wouldn't accompany these idiots in death. Chapter 1075. Pavilion Master. Wait for me. Gohan turned his head and saw the team leader, Shang Yi, running behind him, gasping for breath as he called out Gohan's previous identity. However, when Gohan's figure completely disappeared into the mountain, Shang Ye's mind was filled with all kinds of fear. He thought of the scene when Gohan led them into battle in Yuzhong City. He thought of Gohan's flawless plans. He thought of Gohan's eloquent demeanor during the trial conference. He also thought of how Gohan defeated Liuyan Ling and helped Yuzhong City become the champion of the 8 Academies Conference for the first time in decade. This giant dragon had the appearance of a standard Western giant dragon. It looked like a giant lizard with a pair of lightning-like wings on its back. It had a pair of thick thighs and a pair of dragon claws that looked very slender compared to its thighs. Sir, you are so righteous. I admire you. Shang Yi was even more impressed. You were an ancient sword-rank swordsman back then, right? Gohan thought for a moment and said, among those swordsmen, there were only 3 treasure sword-rank swordsmen. I remember them very clearly. One was called Shi Shuai, one was called Luo Tian, and the last one was called Yu Feiying. As for the other ancient sword-rank swordsmen, I don't remember them very clearly. Oh right. Since you recognized me, why didn't you expose my identity? Gohan asked curiously. Yes, brother Gohan. Shang Yi quickly corrected himself. So you were the swordsman who was trapped in the communications building back then. Hearing Shang Ye's words, Gohan suddenly remembered. When he had led the 1,000 swordsmen guarding the city wall into the core area, the first batch of swordsmen to be rescued were the swordsmen and staff trapped in the communications building near the garbage treatment plant. Gohan still remembered rescuing more than 20 swordsmen from the communications building. Now that he thought about it carefully, he did vaguely see Shang Ye's shadow. You recognized me? Gohan was a little surprised. He did not expect someone in the team to recognize his true identity. Furthermore, the other party did not address him by his real name, Gohan. Instead, he addressed him as Pavilion Master. The meaning behind this was not simple. Replying to Lord Pavilion Master's question, I actually recognized Lord Pavilion Master's identity at first glance. Actually, Lord Pavilion Master doesn't know this, but I'm a loyal fan of Lord Pavilion Master. Back when I was trapped in the communication building in the core area, it was Lord Pavilion Master who led the troops to rescue me. Otherwise, I would have died at the hands of Yuan Ko in less than 20 minutes. Lord Pavilion Master is my savior, and I've always remembered Lord Pavilion Master's face, even if Lord Pavilion Master was in a sorry state. Shang Yi said with admiration. Cover your ears. Hearing a dragon's roar at such a close distance is very likely to rupture your eardrums. Seeing this scene, Gohan immediately warned Shang Yi who was beside him. With the previous experience, Shang Yi had already regarded Gohan's words as the golden rule. Therefore, he immediately plugged his ears with his fingers without hesitation. When the two of them were fully prepared to welcome the dragon's roar, oh no! A clear and melodious child's voice rang out from the mouth of the enormous white dragon. "What the hell is this?" Both Shang Yi and Gohan were so frightened by these words that they loosened their fingers from plugging their ears. "Not good, that lightning dragon is coming out." Gohan immediately reacted. This was a sign that the lightning dragon was about to be born. The seal within the mountain range could no longer seal this lightning dragon called Kana. It was likely that it would break out of the seal soon. "This is the lightning dragon, Kana Kamyi," Shang Yi muttered to himself with a face full of fear. He didn't doubt that if this enormous dragon stomped down, it could easily turn him into a pile of minced meat. "My lord, you've actually remembered the names of these three until now." Shang Ye's face was full of amazement. He obviously didn't dare to believe that Gohan could remember the names of these three sword-bearers he'd only met by chance. "My lord's wisdom in the Battle of Yuzhong City has already deeply convinced me. I believe in Lord Owner's judgment. Since Lord Owner said that the lightning dragon will revive, then it will definitely revive. I'm not willing to wait for death in the belly of the mountain." Before I left, I also tried to persuade the others, but unfortunately, they weren't willing to listen to me, so I could only come out myself. Shang Yi explained. Following the split of the mountain, a huge dragon leapt out from the belly of the mountain. This was a pure white dragon. Its exact size was hard to describe, but it was about the same size as the ruins of the Bird's Nest Stadium in Yanjing City. Shang Yi clenched his teeth, stamped his feet, and followed behind Gohan to escape. He didn't think that he would actually be able to escape with his life. Shang Yi couldn't help but stand behind Gohan, and even slightly bend his knees, not daring to exceed Gohan in height. Shang Yi was a 1.85 meters tall man, half a head taller than Gohan, but now he looked half a head shorter than Gohan. When Gohan left the belly of the mountain and ran all the way to the foot of the mountain, Gohan thought that no one would be willing to give up the treasure that was so close at hand and escape from the belly of the mountain. However, he didn't think that there would be someone following closely behind him, following him all the way down. From beginning to end, Gohan couldn't defeat the powerful U-class Yuan Ko, and he only managed to survive until the reinforcements from Yanjing City arrived. In the end, he was forcibly sealed and wasn't allowed to enter the game for 3 days. Of course, because of this, Gohan accompanied Song Hama to test the sword element, and that was also why he had the fated encounter with Liuanian Ling. Then, he met his own nemesis, the Qinpin sword. They are all sword-bearers who sacrifice their strength and lives to protect Yuzhong City, so I have no reason not to remember them. If it wasn't for my poor memory, I would even be willing to remember the names of all the ancient sword-bearers. Gohan said calmly. "All right. Don't call me this one, and don't call me sir. It makes me feel uncomfortable." Gohan curled his lips. "You're a few years older than me, and we're brothers who went through life and death together in Yuzhong City. Let's just call each other brothers. I'll call you Brother Shang Yi, and you can call me Brother Gohan. There's no need to be so awkward. I wonder how this Thunder Dragon compares to Zayuneta." Seeing this Thunder Dragon, Gohan couldn't help but think of the U-class Yuan Ko, the Dark Dragon King Zayuneta, that he had fought in the Wudong Peak dungeon. Shang Yi looked at the scene in front of him, sweating profusely. At the same time, he was glad that he had run out. Actually, when Gohan left, Shang Yi was also very hesitant. He had paid a higher price than the other sword-bearers, and he wanted the precious treasure even more. Therefore, Shang Yi had originally decided to ignore Gohan's decision. He was still waiting in the belly of the mountain, waiting for the opportunity that he didn't know would come. It was worth mentioning that this pure white dragon's legs were shorter and thicker than the legs of the other Western dragons that Gohan had seen. It seemed to be more powerful. However, this dragon's face was very different from the fierce crocodile face of the other Western dragons. This Thunder Dragon's face was round, and it looked more like a big pancake. As for the others, they landed in the lush forest. Gohan couldn't see the final outcome. In any case, if they didn't die, they would be crippled. This earthquake lasted for a few minutes. Soon, Gohan saw the other sword-bearers fleeing from the belly of the mountain in a panic. As soon as they got out of the cave, they landed on the platform. The vibration of the mountain reached its peak. Then, amidst the screams of the sword-bearers, the whole mountain split from the middle. It was as if someone had used a giant axe to split it. Probably because it had been sealed for too long, when this thunder dragon woke up from its slumber, it couldn't help but open its bloody mouth. It seemed like it was ready to announce its resurrection with a loud dragon roar. So that's how it is. Gohan nodded and asked with a smile, "The others are waiting in the belly of the mountain for Lu Yunye to come out. Why did you come out with me? Aren't you afraid of missing the treasure that you have been searching for?" "Oh no. Oh no." This thunder dragon continued to repeat it in a flat, lowly voice. It seemed that Gohan didn't hear wrongly. This was indeed a big deal. Actually, Su Junjie wasn't the only one who saw the wanted order from the Sword Committee before his personal terminal was damaged. I actually saw it too. Shang Yi smiled bitterly. At first, I was worried about how to help you cover up your identity. But since you gave yourself a fake name, I'll go with the flow and pretend that I don't know you. It's just that you have been staying with Miss Yunye, so I didn't have the chance to reveal my identity until now. As the two of them were talking, the ground suddenly began to shake violently. That was especially true for the mountain that contained the buried treasure. It was as though the mountain was collapsing and the earth was cracking. Countless rocks rolled down, and it seemed as though the mountain was on the verge of collapsing. As a result, the rest of the sword-bearers fell from the mountainside along with the endless falling rocks. Through his frosty eyesight, he could clearly see that the quiet Yu Yu and the even quieter Qin Liang had been smashed by a huge boulder. They were instantly turned into a pile of minced meat. They could not be any more dead than they were. Chapter 1076. Oh no, I'm so hungry. The Thunder Dragon Kong Na calmly narrated this fact, and then her body swept across the ground, and Gohan saw that her claws were grabbing onto a struggling figure. It's Li Xiangtian. He was caught by this dragon. This dragon won't eat him, right? Shang Yi immediately exclaimed after he saw that the person caught by the dragon's claws was Li Xiangtian. Maybe. Gohan shrugged. Although Western dragons are similar in size, they have different tastes. Some dragons like to eat humans, and some dragons think that humans are the most unpalatable things in the world, so I don't know if this thunder dragon will eat Li Xiangtian. This pure white thunder dragon didn't eat Li Xiangtian immediately after catching him, but like pinching a grasshopper, she put him in front of her eyes, and just quietly looked at Li Xiangtian. Although Gohan didn't know what this thunder dragon was thinking, she seemed to be guessing whether Li Xiangtian tasted good or not. As for Li Xiangtian, who had been treated as food, he was so scared that he was completely dumbfounded. He waved his hands and legs, but because they were too far away, Gohan and Shang Yi couldn't hear what Li Xiangtian was saying. He didn't know if this thunder dragon had a phobia of choice, but after struggling for 5 to 6 minutes, she still couldn't decide whether to eat Li Xiangtian or not. Therefore, this thunder dragon slowly flapped her wings in the air, landed on the ground, and grabbed Li Xiangtian's dragon claws and asked with some annoyance, "Is this thing delicious? Lord Gohan, is it asking us?" Shang Yi couldn't help but ask Gohan while trembling all over. "Aren't you talking nonsense? She has already sent him in front of us, so of course she is asking us." Gohan smiled helplessly, because this thunder dragon had extended Li Xiangtian in front of him and Shang Yi. Li Xiangtian and Gohan were less than a meter away, and Gohan only needed to stretch out his hand to touch Li Xiangtian's head. "Save me! Save me!" Seeing Gohan and Shang Yi, Li Xiangtian immediately looked like he saw a life-saving straw, and frantically shouted, "Save me! Hurry, save me!" Shang Yi instinctively pulled out his sword Maiden. At this moment Li Xiangtian was less than a meter away from him, and Shang Yi felt that if his sword maiden was a little faster, he might be able to attack this thunder dragon's dragon claws when she wasn't paying attention, and see if he could force the thunder dragon to let go. Don't act rashly. Guhan pressed down on Shang Ye's hand, and this action was seen by Li Xiangtian. This guy immediately became angry and angrily scolded, "Lung Qingqiu, you bastard, you are not loyal, you abandoned us in the mountain and ran away by yourself. We painstakingly saved you from Yuan Ko's hands in vain. Now the captain is planning to save me, and you are crazy enough to stop him. You heartless bastard, even if I become a ghost, I will not let you off. If you really become a ghost, I will kill you just like how I killed Yuan Ko. In any case, ghosts are just a kind of Yuan Ko." Guhan coldly said, "As for why I stopped Shang Yi from saving you, it is because I don't want Shang Yi to become someone else's meal like you. Shang Yi, you don't think that with your strength, you can really save him, right?" Guhan turned to look at Shang Yi and said, "If you must save him, I will not stop you." "You are right, I am muddle-headed." Shang Yi had already calmed down. How could he still have the guts to save someone from the hands of this lightning dragon? "Captain, boss, don't listen to this guy's nonsense. This dragon is very weak. You can definitely save me easily." This Li Xiangtian, in order to survive, no longer cared about other people's lives. He could even say this kind of brainless words. "You guys are so noisy. Quickly tell Kong Na, is this thing delicious? Don't lie to Kong Na." Lightning Dragon Kong Na waited for a long time, but did not hear Guhan's answer, so she said somewhat impatiently, "Lord, how should I answer?" Shang Yi moved closer to Guhan and asked in a low voice. He really did not know how to answer Kong Na's question. If he answered that it was delicious, then Li Xiangtian would most likely be eaten by this lightning dragon. But if he answered that it was not delicious, then would this lightning dragon think that he was lying to her? More importantly, would that lightning dragon change to something delicious to eat? For example, himself who was only a meter away from its claws. Shang Yi was deeply conflicted. He completely did not know how to answer Kong Na's question. "Lord Lightning Dragon." Since Shang Yi did not dare to answer, then he could only let Guhan answer. Only to hear Guhan reply in a clear voice without a trace of fear, "To be honest, we have not eaten this thing before, so we also do not know how it tastes." Hearing Guhan's words, Lightning Dragon Kong Na revealed a trace of disappointment inside. "Oh no, Kong Na is so hungry. But if Lord Kong Na really wants to know whether this thing tastes good or not, then I have an idea." Guhan continued. "Oh no, what idea do you have?" Kong Na asked curiously. "Actually, if you want to know whether this thing tastes good or not, Lord Kong Na has to personally taste it. So I think it would be better if I cut a small piece of meat from his body and let Lord Kong Na have a taste. It's only a small piece of meat. If it is not delicious, Lord Kong Na will not have too much of a reaction. What do you think, Lord Kong Na?" Guhan said with a smile. "Just a small piece?" Kong Na very seriously pondered for a moment. "All right. Cut a piece of the most delicious part for me to taste. Don't cut a big piece. Kong Na hates disgusting things the most." "Understood." Guhan nodded, then pulled out his heavenly sword and looked at Li Xiangtian with some difficulty. "My apologies, comrade, this is all I can do." It's fine. I have to thank you, it's only a piece of meat," Li Xiangtian said with a smile that was uglier than crying. However, this was already the best result for him. As long as he cut a small piece of meat, he would have a hope of surviving. At least it was better than his entire body being eaten by this dragon. "However, Brother Ling Qingqiu, I beg you on my knees, please don't cut off any delicious part of my body, just pick the most disgusting part of my body to cut off, please," Li Xiangtian said in a low voice. He understood that right now, his life and death were in the hands of Guhan. If Guhan picked the most delicious part of his body and cut it off, then he would be finished. Otherwise, he would have a chance of survival. But there is a problem. Guhan also very seriously thought for a moment, then said in a low voice, I have never eaten a human before, so I don't know which part of your body is the most disgusting. How about this? Now the one I want to cut off is Brother Xiangtian's body. You decide where I want to cut off. This. I have never eaten it before. How would I know? Li Xiangtian felt like he was going crazy. Guhan actually wanted him to decide which part of his body to cut off. This was too cruel. But Guhan quickly said, Brother Xiangtian, you better make up your mind quickly. I think this dragon is getting impatient. Who knows, it might just eat you up in one bite. Leg. Cut off the meat from the leg. Hearing Guhan say this, Li Xiangtian immediately said without thinking, All right. Guhan waved the heavenly sword in his hand. Just as he was about to cut off the meat from Li Xiangtian's thigh, Li Xiangtian seemed to have realized something and shouted, No, no. I remember that the most delicious part of a chicken's body is the drumstick, so the most delicious part of a human's body must be the human leg, definitely not the thigh. I think you should cut off the meat from the arm. Guhan said, then prepared to cut off Li Xiangtian's arm. No, no. In the end, Li Xiangtian shouted again, Chicken feet are also very delicious. I love eating chicken feet the most, so the meat in my hand must also taste very good. Definitely not. How about I cut off the meat from the stomach? The meat there is a little greasy. Maybe the dragon doesn't like to eat greasy things. So, Guhan decided not to cut off the meat. He just stood there and listened to Li Xiangtian analyze which part of his body was the most delicious. No, if I cut off the meat from the stomach, my internal organs will all come out, and I might die even faster. How about I cut off the meat from the buttocks? That part is also very greasy. That's not right, the buttocks are actually the most delicious part of the thighs. I can't cut off the buttocks. In the time it took to say more than 10 sentences, Li Xiangtian had almost analyzed every part of his body, but in the end, he realized that he could not bear to cut off any part of his body, so he was at an impasse. I'm so hungry. Are you done cutting it? Kong Na shouted again. This time, even without Guhan's urging, Li Xiangtian knew he could not hesitate and struggle anymore. Forget it, I don't care where it is, as long as it tastes the worst. Li Xiangtian thought anxiously, what part of a human body tastes the worst? Do you still need to ask? Of course, it's Daddy's poop that tastes the worst. But Daddy's poop is in the intestines. If I cut off the intestines and there's no medical pod, I'll be finished. That's right. Pee. Pee is smelly and smelly, this dragon definitely won't like it. But in that case, wouldn't I have to? Thinking of this, Li Xiangtian suddenly fell into a dilemma. Either he cut off the most precious and unpalatable part of his body, or he would simply be eaten by this dragon. Although this question was very difficult to decide, the answer was very easy to choose. After hesitating for 2 or 3 seconds, Li Xiangtian revealed a fearless expression and said to Guhan, Brother Ling Qingqiu, please cut off my thing below. Let this dragon have a taste. Oh, okay. Guhan nodded, raised his sword, and cut off that thing. Just when he was about to throw it to Kong Na to have a taste, Kong Na's patience finally reached its limit. Li Xiangtian had not reacted to what had happened, and like a peanut, Kong Na casually threw it into her mouth. Chapter 1077. Oh no. It's really disgusting. The unlucky Li Xiangtian was only chewed in Kong Na's mouth for a while before he was spat out by Kong Na. Obviously, Li Xiangtian was not to Kong Na's taste. Guhan noticed that when Li Xiangtian was spat out, his upper and lower body had already been separated from each other. They ended up in 2 different locations about 2 to 3 kilometers apart. Unless someone immediately placed Li Xiangtian's upper body into the med bay, Li Xiangtian was dead for sure. I'm so hungry. Kong Na is going to starve to death. After spitting out Li Xiangtian, Kong Na became even hungrier. She flapped her wings impatiently and scanned her surroundings in panic. In the end, she flapped her wings and soared into the sky. Within seconds, she had disappeared from Gu Han's line of sight. She left just like that? Shang Yi looked at the direction where Kong Na disappeared with a dazed expression. He found it hard to believe that the powerful Yuan Ko just left without eating him and Gohan. Why? Do you still want her to come back? Gohan rolled his eyes at Shang Yi. There's no time for nonsense. Hurry up and find those guys who fell from the sky. I hope they're still alive. Yes. Shang Yi suddenly remembered that his teammates were still in danger and ran to save them. Shang Yi was busy until the sky turned dark before he finally found all his teammates. Yu Yu and Qin Liang were very unfortunate. They were smashed into meat paste by a huge rock in front of Gohan. Later on, Gohan also found the huge rock and the pool of corpses that could not be recognized. He could only pack up their belongings, the sword lady, and the dimensional bag to bring back to their families. According to the laws of the Sword Committee, if there was a swordsman among the descendants of the swordsman, then the swordsman's belongings would be handed over to his descendants. Only the descendants of the swordsman could open the dimensional bag and inherit the property inside. However, the sword maiden was public property, and descendants were not qualified to inherit it. It had to be returned to the sword pavilion. If the descendant of the swordsman did not have a swordsman, then the descendant would use his blood and the secret method of the Sword Committee to open the dimensional pocket. All the items inside would be converted into RMB. Then, half of the RMB would be given to the descendant of the swordsman, and the other half would be used as inheritance tax. Aside from the 50% inheritance tax, any rare resources that could only be purchased with hero coins would be a loss if they were converted into RMB according to the official price set by the government. No swordsman would be willing to convert them into RMB. Unfortunately, the swordsman of this family was dead, and this family did not have the capital to bargain with the Sword Committee. Therefore, whether a sword wielder's descendant had a sword wielder or not was extremely important. Having a sword wielder or not was the difference between the heavens and the earth. If the sword wielder did not even have a descendant, then it would be very troublesome. This meant that it would be very difficult for outsiders to open the sword wielder's dimensional pocket, even for Jiandi. Only by using the sword cleansing pool in the Sword Committee could the imprint of the sword wielder in the dimensional pocket be removed, and then the items in the pocket could be taken out. However, if one wanted to use the sword washing pool, they would have to use 100 drops of sovereign blood. This was undoubtedly a massive expenditure, and even if the Sword Committee was unwilling to spend such a large amount of money, the wealth within the dimensional pockets that could not be opened was still quite tempting. Therefore, after some calculations, the Sword Committee decided to activate the sword cleansing pool once they had collected 10,000 dimensional pockets that could not be opened. This would remove all the imprints of the dimensional pockets in one go. In the past 1,000 years, it was said that the sword cleansing pool had only been opened 5 times, and the last time was 80 years ago. According to the information that Gohan had seen when he was still the Sword Pavilion Master, the Sword Committee had accumulated more than 7,000 dimensional pockets that could not be opened because there were no descendants. Gohan estimated that in another 20 to 30 years, the sword cleansing pool would not be opened again. Next was Li Xiangtian. This unlucky guy's upper body was found, but his lower body was missing. However, some traces of Yuan Ko were found at the place where his lower body had fallen. It seemed that although Li Xiangtian's lower body was not eaten by Kong Na, it had been eaten by another Yuan Ko. An hour had passed by the time Shang Yi found Li Xiangtian. Naturally, Li Xiangtian was as dead as a doornail. Shang Yi wiped away a few tears and placed Li Xiangtian's body in a coffin. He placed it in his dimensional pocket and prepared to bring it back to Yuzhang City for burial. This was the tradition of every sword-bearer. Sword-bearers could be sacrificed at any time in battle. Every sword-bearer had encountered their teammates dying in front of them. After these teammates died, the only thing the survivors could do was to help collect their corpses. Even if these two sword-bearers were mortal enemies, as long as one of them died, the other would let go of their hatred and help collect the other's corpse. This would allow the other party to return to their roots and be buried in their base. Everyone said that there were 3 things a sword-bearer must carry in their dimensional pocket. The first was food, the third was a medical pod, and the third was a coffin. These 3 things were an unchanging existence in the dimensional pocket. This time, when Shang Yi went out, he brought a total of 12 coffins in his dimensional pocket. This meant that Shang Yi was prepared for the entire team to be wiped out. He had used 2 coffins to collect Yu Yu and Qin Liang's corpses. Li Xiangtian used another one. The 4 sword-bearers who died before Gohan joined the team also took up 4 coffins. So now, Shang Ye's dimensional pocket had a total of 7 coffins filled with corpses. Just thinking about it made people panic. Su Junjie was also dead. The young man hit a tree stump when he fell, and the tree stump penetrated his abdomen. At this time, Shang Yi was already used to death. After seeing Su Junjie's corpse, he let out a sigh and helped him collect his corpse. Now there was one more corpse in his dimensional pocket. Zuozong Ryu was very lucky to survive. When he landed, both his legs hit a rock. Although his life was saved, both his legs were completely crippled. He also fell unconscious due to excessive blood loss. Shang Yi could only offer his medical pod and put him inside. Then, he carried him and continued the arduous search. The next to be found was Chu Hanming. This guy was very lucky. When he fell, he was blocked by a huge tree. In the end, he fell into a wet swamp. When Shang Yi and Gu Han used all their strength to pull her out of the swamp, Chu Hanming's body was actually unharmed, without a single injury. It could be said to be a miracle. At this point, only Melauer and Lu Yunue were left. But according to Chu Hanming, when he was trapped in the swamp, he saw Melauer quickly running away from him. He shouted with all his might, hoping that Melauer would save him, but Melauer didn't pay any attention to him. This made Chu Hanming almost die from anger. It seems that our Miss Melauer must have found something valuable. Gohan speculated. What valuable thing can there be around here? Shang Yi muttered. Suddenly, he came to a realization. I understand. The most valuable thing around here is probably that dimensional brocade pouch. Melauer must have found the place where the dimensional brocade pouch fell and went to look for it. Although everyone had many guesses, when the sky turned completely dark, Gohan and Shang Yi still hadn't found Melauer and Lu Yunue. They could only give up on the matter. That night, not a single person made a sound. A deep sorrow lingered in their hearts. Although this was a temporary team, everyone had their own plans. There wasn't much trust between the members, but this was still a team that had lived and fought together for nearly 20 days. Just when victory was so close at hand and everyone was ready to reap the rewards, they encountered such a huge accident. Apart from the freezing cold, only 2 members of the entire team survived unscathed. One was lying unconscious in the medical pod, and the other 2 had disappeared without a trace. The rest were completely dead on this piece of land. They could only bring back 8 corpses that could not even be identified as human. Even if she wanted to cry, she wouldn't be able to. She could only spend a silent night. Gohan, who was on sentry duty in the first half of the night, was woken up by the urgent ringing of his personal terminal. His personal terminal would automatically wake him up. This made Gohan immediately understand that something was wrong. Because he was afraid that his whereabouts would be exposed, Gohan took the initiative to turn off the external communication function of his personal terminal. He also took the initiative to block everyone's communication with him, except for 3 people. They were his good disciple Lu Shihua, Song Yifei, who had disappeared for 3 years, and Liu Ling, who had not been contacted since the underground palace. In other words, only these 3 people could find Gohan through his personal terminal. Gohan glanced at his personal terminal and found that it was Lu Shihua who was calling him. After discovering that his Zifu was sealed, Gohan sent a message to Lu Shihua, telling her that he would find a way to return to Yuzhong City. He asked her not to contact him under normal circumstances, but if there was any major change, she must inform him. Could it be that there was a major change now? Gohan didn't dare to neglect and immediately connected to Lu Shihua's communication. He only heard Lu Shihua's voice on the other side of the communication was very anxious, and there was a hint of fear in it. Master, it's bad. It's a flood-level Yuan Ko. A white flood-level dragon is attacking our Yuzhong City. The energy of our dimensional shield is running out quickly. We can't hold on much longer. Chapter 1078. Brother Shangyi, do you have a vehicle like a hovercraft? Hurry up and take it out. We need to go to Yuzhong City right now. After ending the call with Lu Shihua, Gohan immediately found Shangyi, who was still sound asleep. Pavilion Master, did something big happen? You don't look so good. This was the first time Shangyi had seen Gohan look so bad. He immediately realized that something big must have happened in Yuzhong City. Unfortunately, his personal terminal was broken. But thinking of Gohan's bad expression, Shangyi immediately guessed that something big must have happened in Yuzhong City. It's the lightning dragon that left yesterday. Even I didn't expect it to go to Yuzhong City. Now it's attacking Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier. Once the dimensional barrier is broken, the whole of Yuzhong City will be in danger. Gohan said anxiously. No way. Normally, a giant dragon is only a universe-level Yuan Ko. Yuzhong City has Sword Immortal Ling Su, the dimensional barrier, and the cooperation of tens of thousands of sword-bearers. A universe-level Yuan Ko can't even touch a hair of Yuzhong City. Why would Yuzhong City be in such danger? Shangyi said in confusion. Sword Immortal Ling Su was the chairman of Yuzhong City's Sword Committee. However, Sword Immortal Ling Su was not a native of Yuzhong City. He was a Sword Immortal transferred from Los Angeles City. Yanjing City had the most immortal sword-tier sword-bearers, so it was reasonable to send an immortal sword-tier sword-bearer from Yanjing City. But the problem was that the relationship between Yuzhong City and Yanjing City was extremely bad. Yuzhong City could not accept a sword-bearer from Yanjing City as their supreme leader. So they could only settle for the next best thing. They transferred an immortal sword-tier sword-bearer from Los Angeles City. Although this immortal sword-wielder was from Los Angeles, he had 80% Huaxia blood in him. Thus, the people of Yuzhong City were not averse to such a leader. Thus, Sword Immortal Ling Su successfully became the chairman of Yuzhong City's Sword Committee. However, according to the agreement between Sword Immortal Ling Su and the Yuzhong City Sword Committee, once an immortal sword rank sword wielder was born in Yuzhong City, Sword Immortal Ling Su had to immediately step down and hand over the position of chairman of the Sword Committee to a native Yuzhong City immortal sword rank sword wielder, no matter how well Sword Immortal Ling Su performed. What if that lightning dragon isn't a universe-class Yuan Ko or an Eon-class Yuan Ko, but a flood-class Yuan Ko? Gohan said hurriedly. What? Shangyi was shocked. There's a flood-level Western dragon? At this time, Shangyi couldn't help but be surprised. In the nearly 1,000 years of history after the Great Calamity, there had been at least 50 Western giant dragon bandits, if not 100. These Western giant dragons were generally of very high levels, with the weakest being a nether-level bandit, which was equivalent to a human spirit sword-level sword-bearer. However, the upper limit of Western dragons was not high. The most powerful Western dragon was only an Eon-class Yuan Ko. From the beginning to the end, none of the Western dragons could reach the Flood class, which was the strength of an Emperor-class sword-bearer. Western dragons can never break through the Flood class. This was a setting that almost all humans had reached a consensus on. They never thought that this setting would be broken today. A flood-class Western dragon had appeared in front of everyone, completely breaking the consensus that had been formed for 1,000 years. Could it be that there's a mistake somewhere? How could this lightning dragon be a flood-class Yuan Ko? Shang Yi still speculated in disbelief. It can't be wrong. Sword Immortal Ling Su has already been defeated by her, and he was only able to last for less than 10 minutes. The Wangshu Sword Empress Personal Shield only has less than 10% of its power left. This is definitely the power that a run-grade Yuan bandit can possess. There's no mistaking it, Gohan said with certainty. The Wangshu sword was Sword Immortal Ling Su's Immortal Sword Dame. Although the Wangshu sword was ranked lower among the Immortal Sword Dame, it was a Confucian sword dame with strong defense. In addition, Sword Immortal Ling Su was a veteran sword immortal with more than 10 million sword elements and had reached the level of an Emperor-class sword bearer. He could withstand any Yuan Ko below the flood class for more than 10 hours, but now he only lasted for 10 minutes. There was no doubt about the level of this lightning dragon. It had to be a flood-class Yuan Ko. Shang Yi obviously understood this, so after hearing Gohan's words, he didn't say anything more. Instead, he fell into deep anxiety. Shang Ye's family was lucky enough to escape last time and did not die in the attack. But last time, there was no flood-class and desolate-class Yuan Ko to attack Yuzhong City. At the same time, there were 2 Immortal Sword tier sword bearers who fought to the death to barely survive. But this time, Yuzhong City was facing a flood-class Yuan Ko, and Yuzhong City only had 1 Immortal Sword tier sword bearer left. Moreover, this Immortal Sword tier sword bearer was not born and raised in Yuzhong City. It was hard to believe that such a person would live and die with Yuzhong City. Maybe when he realized that things were not going well, he would immediately escape. He would not fight to the death for Yuzhong City. If that happened, Yuzhong City would be in extreme danger again. Hao Tian Jiandi and Long Shi Jiandi, these 2 Jiandi will definitely make a move. As long as Hao Tian Jiandi makes a move, Yuzhong City will be able to resist. At this time, Shang Yi could only place his last hope on Hao Tian Jiandi and Long Shi Jiandi. We can't place our hopes on others. We have to contribute our strength to Yuzhong City. Although Gohan said this, he actually knew that Hao Tian Jiandi had entered the Ascension period and could ascend at any time. The Ascension period sounded very powerful. In Xianxia novels, it was the strongest existence in the cultivation world. However, in reality, the Ascension period was when Jiandi was at his weakest. At this time, Jiandi's power and sword essence would begin to decline rapidly. From an Emperor Sword tier sword bearer with tens of millions of sword essence, he would eventually become an ordinary person with no sword essence. Then, Jiandi would be attracted by the power of the void and dimension, and he would be unstoppably sucked into the void. This was also the origin of the term ascension. The process of being sucked into the void looked like an immortal ascending. However, most people knew in their hearts that there was only one result of ascending into the void, and that was to die in the void. However, in order to obtain a good omen and at the same time not give up that little bit of hope, they called this Sword Emperor Ascension. They said that the Sword Emperor could ascend to another world and continue living in that world. Since Hao Tian Jiandi had entered the Ascension period, it meant that Hao Tian Jiandi's sword essence was constantly declining. As for Hao Tian Jiandi's true strength, only Hao Tian Jiandi himself knew. However, according to Lu Shihua's information, Hao Tian Jiandi had entered the Ascension period a year ago. The Ascension period usually lasted about 2 to 3 years. In other words, Hao Tian Jiandi's strength should have been reduced by half. He might still be an Emperor Sword tier sword bearer, but he might have fallen to the level of an Immortal Sword tier. According to past practices, after entering the Ascension period, Jiandi would live in seclusion. Unless humanity was facing a crisis of extinction, he would definitely not reveal his true strength. This way, Yuan Ko would not know what Jiandi's current strength was. This way, Jiandi would still be a strong deterrent. Otherwise, once Jiandi attacked, Yuan Ko would know that Jiandi had entered the ascension period. Humans would have one less Jiandi's strength, and the situation would become very dangerous. Moreover, once Jiandi attacked during the ascension period, it would also speed up Jiandi's ascension. This was because once the ascension period used the sword essence in one's body, the sword essence that was used would not be recovered. To put it bluntly, at this time, Hao Tian Jiandi seemed to have been hit by a debuff that continuously reduced the upper limit of his sword essence, and could not recover it. In short, according to Gohan's estimation, Hao Tian Jiandi would probably not attack. The only one who could attack was Long Shi Jiandi, who was in the prime of his life. However, Long Shi Jiandi was in London. Even if he wanted to rush over, it would take at least a day. Moreover, the desolate level Yuan Ko of the Martyr's Palace camp had been staring at Long Shi Jiandi. It would be very difficult for Long Shi Jiandi to attack. Originally, Yahweh was also staring at Long Shi Jiandi, but recently, Heaven's forces had shrunk very much. It was very difficult to see any traces of angels in the world, and Yahweh had never shown up again. Otherwise, Long Shi Jiandi would have had a terrible headache. According to Lu Shihua, there was really no one in Yuzhang City who could help. Based on the rate at which the dimensional barrier was being consumed, it would take at most 3 days for the dimensional barrier to be broken by the giant dragon. That was why Lu Shihua had panicked and asked Gohan for help. However, Lu Shihua did not ask for help from Gohan because she hoped that Gohan could help. She already knew that Gohan's Zifu was sealed. At this time, Gohan was unable to save Yuzhang City. She hoped that Gohan could contact Liuyan Ling. At this moment, only the sword-bearers of the Liuyan clan could defeat the flood-level Yuan Ko. However, Lu Shihua did not know that Liuyan Ling had cut off all contact with Gohan. Even if Gohan wanted to ask Liuyan Ling for help, he could not find her. Therefore, at this moment, Gohan could only rely on himself. I do have a hovercraft, but it is only an old model, and it can't be used in the lush jungle. We will have to walk for at least a few days to leave this jungle, Shang Yi said in a dilemma. The hovercraft was simply useless in the lush jungle. As long as it was started, it would only end up crashing into a tree. And Pavilion Master, what can we do even if we rush to Yuzhang City? Your Zifu has already been sealed, and Chu Hanming and I are only a treasure rank sword-bearer and an ancient rank sword-bearer. If we go there, we won't even be able to withstand one of the dragon's claws, Shang Yi said worriedly. You can just inject sword essence into the dimensional wall. Gohan did not listen to Shang Yi at all. He directly asked Shang Yi to take out the hovercraft, and then chased the remaining 2 people away. Zuozong then threw them into the trunk of the hovercraft in the medical pod. Then, he stepped on the gas pedal of the hovercraft and turned into a bolt of lightning that began to run wildly in the lush jungle. Chapter 1079. If someone from the Yanjing City Traffic Management Bureau saw this hovercraft racing through the forest, they would definitely exclaim that the white specter that had disturbed everyone 3 years ago had returned. But this time, he had moved the battlefield from the streets of Yanjing City to the forest filled with tall trees. The danger factor was more than 10 times higher than before. Shang Yi sat in the front passenger seat expressionlessly. It wasn't that Shang Ye's spiritual cultivation had reached a level where he could face everything calmly. It was because his face was so stiff that he couldn't make any expression. He was scared out of his wits. When Shang Yi first bought this second-hand hovercraft, it was because it was very cheap. It was only 1/10 of the price of other hovercrafts that were popular on the market. Even a sword wielder like Shang Yi could barely afford it. So, this hovercraft was not only a second-hand hovercraft, it was also an extremely old model that had been produced for more than 60 years. Normally, Shang Yi wouldn't dare to drive it over 200 kilometers per hour on good ground. Otherwise, this hovercraft could fall apart at any time. But Shang Yi never thought that his hovercraft would one day be able to reach 600 kilometers per hour. Moreover, it was in a forest filled with thick trees. Sometimes, the distance between two trees was less than a meter. There were hundreds of times when Shang Yi thought that he was going to crash into a tree, but a light flashed in front of him and the tree dodged him. Thinking up to this point, Shang Yi looked at Gu Han, who was fully focused on driving the hovercar, with even more admiration. At the same time, he thought to himself, even if this pavilion master can't remove the seal on his Zifu in the future, with his driving skills, he can still become a professional hovercar racer. Winning the Grand Slam of the professional league would probably be a very simple matter. But at the same time, Shang Yi didn't notice that Gohan was sweating profusely. His eyes were bloodshot. Gohan had been racing in the forest for 4 to 5 hours. The long period of concentration had almost exhausted Gohan's spirit. Moreover, Gohan didn't have the physical foundation of a sword wielder. This kind of exhaustion was very scary for a normal person. No. I need to rest. Gohan, who was driving, also realized that his energy had reached its limit. Gohan was not the kind of person who would waste his energy on a dead end. He decided to ease off the accelerator and slowly reduce the speed of the car. He wanted to find a place to sleep and replenish his energy. At this moment, something unforeseen happened. The big tree in front suddenly stood up. That's right, the big tree stood up and moved a little to his left. Do not underestimate this small distance. In order to travel through the forest, Gohan had calculated every little bit of distance to the limit. Damn it! Why is there a treant here? Gohan couldn't help but curse. It turned out that the moving tree was not a real tree, but a treant Yuan Ko. These treants were no different from normal trees. They would only move occasionally. Moreover, Gohan had used up too much of his energy, so he couldn't tell if the tree in front of him was a real tree or a real one. He didn't even consider the possibility of a tree suddenly moving. When Gohan decided to turn the steering wheel, it was already too late. The hovercraft crashed into the big tree. Gohan, who was speeding and driving while tired, could not escape the fate of driving against the law. A tragic accident happened in the nameless forest. In the lush forest, a hovercraft was burning with white flames on the ground. Shang Yi, who was covered in wounds, climbed out of the wreckage with great effort. Shang Yi, who had already considered the possibility of crashing into the hovercraft, had kept his sword Maiden nestled in his hands. As a result, his personal shield took a considerable amount of damage, allowing Shang Yi to escape with his life. Chu Hanming was also very lucky. Although the hovercraft was sent flying, his back seat didn't suffer too much damage. So even though he didn't have his sword Maiden in his hands, he was still able to climb out unscathed. The most unlucky one was probably Zhuozong Ryu. Because the medical pod had received a huge impact, it was directly deformed. Zhuozong Ryu, whose body was only half repaired, also woke up from the medical pod with a groan. When Shang Yi and the others climbed out of the hovercraft, they were surprised to find that Gohan was not in the hovercraft. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. I think I saw Master Ling Qingqiu fly out, Chu Hanming said, scratching his head. Beside the wreckage of the hovercraft was an extremely steep slope. If Gohan had really flown out, he would probably have rolled down the slope. Only the heavens knew if he could keep his life. Gohan had indeed flown out. The impact from the side had sent Gohan flying out of the window of the hovercraft, and Gohan had indeed rolled down the slope, hitting countless rocks and trees along the way. When Gohan finally stopped in a certain position, he felt as if all the bones in his body had been broken. From the perspective of an ordinary person, Gohan would die on the spot in less than 5 minutes. Hey! Are you going to die again? Just as Gohan was in a daze, he suddenly heard Xian Yuan's sword's voice in his ears. Probably, Gohan said absent-mindedly, and then he fainted. Why is it that every time I wake up, you unlucky bastard are going to die. Xian Yuan's sword sharply complained. No, you can't die. I haven't finished eating yet. Xian Yuan's sword whispered. There's no other way. Seems like this is the only way. When Gohan woke up from his coma again, he was surprised to find that not only did he not feel any pain, but he also felt abnormally relaxed and powerful. It was as if he had returned to the time when his Zifu had not been sealed. His whole body was full of power. Gohan, you're finally awake. Hurry up and let us out. We're about to suffocate in the scabbard. Gohan, are you okay? Did something happen to you? Why did you keep us locked in the dimensional pocket? Brother, Xiao Yun misses you so much. Xiao Yun misses you so much that she can't sleep all day. Hey! You bastard, where did my red star Erguotu go? Didn't you take my red star Erguotu for yourself? Master, it's good that you're okay. It's good that you're okay. There were 6 different voices in Gohan's head at the same time. Among these voices, some were coquettish, some were concerned, some were longing, some were urgent, some were calm, and some were weak. But all these voices, without exception, contained concern and longing for Gohan. Qin Pin. Starting point. Xiao Yun. Heavenly reliance. Juzi. Flowing water. How come you can all talk to me? Hearing these voices, Gohan was moved and incomparably shocked. These voices had not appeared in Gohan's head for more than 10 days. And at this moment, didn't their sudden appearance mean that his Zifu had already? Gohan did not have the time to respond to his sword maiden's concern. Instead, he immediately sank his consciousness into his Zifu. When the Zifu was sealed, Gohan's consciousness would be blocked outside the Zifu and would not be able to enter it. But in reality, Gohan didn't feel any hindrance. He entered the Purple Palace without any hindrance. He also saw the 6 sword scars in his Purple Palace flickering with a bright light. This beautiful scene, Gohan hadn't seen it for more than 10 days. This is great. I didn't think that I would actually obtain a blessing in disguise. The seal on my Zifu has been removed. Although Gohan did not understand why a car accident would cause his Zifu to be unsealed, this was undoubtedly a great thing. This meant that Gohan's true strength had been unsealed. Gohan, why are you ignoring us? Qin Pin is going to be angry. Seeing that Gohan did not respond to his question, Qin Pin immediately said angrily, also, quickly release us from the dimensional pocket. Qin Pin is going crazy inside. Okay, I'll release you now. Gohan laughed and without saying anything, he released all the sword maidens from the dimensional pocket. At the same time, he also released all of them into their sword maiden's form. One by one, beautiful figures appeared beside Gohan. Seeing these familiar faces, Gohan was very happy. He had long been accustomed to living together with his sword maidens. More than 10 days without seeing his sword maidens, Gohan's heart felt as if it was being scratched by thousands of monkeys. I'm sorry everyone. My Zifu has been sealed, so everyone can only stay in the dimensional pocket. Gohan casually explained the reason why he left them in the dimensional pocket. But halfway through his explanation, Gohan could not continue because he found that his sword maidens were not listening to him. Instead, all of their attention was focused on his body. Or rather, all of their attention was focused on his face and chest. Could it be? An extremely bad guess emerged in Gohan's heart. Then, he casually touched his chest. The huge soft touch told Gohan that a situation even worse than the seal on his Zifu had appeared. Chapter 1080. Gu Xian Yuan. This name, which Gohan had almost forgotten, appeared in Gohan's mind again. That's right, Gohan no longer existed. In his place was the beautiful Gu Xian Yuan. Xian Yuan's sword. Xian Yuan's sword, come out? Gohan shouted in his sea of consciousness. Not long after, a lazy voice was heard. What's wrong? If you want to thank me, then forget it. What's our relationship? Old friend. Xianyuan's sword, did you cause me to become like this? Gohan said angrily. How can you say that? The Xianyuan's sword was also a little displeased. Don't be mistaken. If I hadn't helped you and activated your body, I'm afraid you would have died here by now. Gohan was instantly speechless. If what the Xianyuan sword said was true, then Gohan really had to thank it for saving his life. What's going on? Can you explain it more clearly? Gohan's tone was much calmer. Don't you know how badly you fell just now? All the bones in your body were broken and more than half of your internal organs were crippled. If I didn't think of a way to save you, you would have died in less than 5 minutes. Even a saint wouldn't have been able to save you. Fortunately, I discovered that the power of the 6 Revolutions Immortal Pill wasn't completely consumed. Instead, it was stored inside your body. However, because you hate that body very much and your willpower is very strong, this power has always been suppressed by your subconscious. If I want to save you, I have no other way but to draw out the power of the 6 Revolutions Immortal Pill and let this power repair your body. Because this power was fused into your body through me, it was easy for me to draw out this power. Of course, side effects are inevitable. You've already experienced it once, so it's no big deal to go through it again. After listening to the Xianyuan sword's explanation, Gohan stopped talking and began to sense his body with all his might. He found that it was just as the Xianyuan sword had said. His body had completely recovered, and he was even more powerful than before. At the same time, there was a power within his body that was completely different from sword essence. It flashed with golden light and fused with his blood, making his blood look like a sovereign bloodline. Thank you, Lady Xianyuan. I was wrong about you, Gohan said to the Xianyuan sword in shame. She had saved him, but he still lost his temper at her. He shouldn't have done that. I'm fine. Who asked us to be good gay friends? The Xianyuan sword laughed nonchalantly. However, hearing this made Gohan feel a bit awkward. He and the Xianyuan sword were clearly a man and a woman, so how could they be good gay friends? However, Gohan immediately realized that he was not Gohan right now, but a woman. From a certain point of view, he and the Xianyuan sword had become good gay friends. After understanding this, Gohan wanted to beat the Xianyuan sword up. Then can I change back to my original appearance? Gohan asked a little anxiously. He did not want to wait another 20 days for Gu Xian's fate like last time. Now that the 6 Revolutions Immortal Pill's power has completely fused with your blood, before your body digests this power, it's impossible for you to turn back into Gohan, the Xianyuan sword said after thinking for a moment. The Xianyuan sword thought for a while and said, Of course, it's not impossible to change back to solid cold. If you change your golden blood, you can immediately change back to solid cold. Blood change? Gohan's eyes lit up when he heard the Xianyuan sword's words. Blood change was not difficult for modern technology. Gohan could even use his celestial sword-grade medical pod to do this. In just half an hour, Gohan could change all the blood in his body, and Gohan would be able to turn back into a man. Thinking of this, Gohan took out his medical pod without hesitation. Just as he was about to change his blood, he heard the Xianyuan sword suddenly say, That's right. The 6 Revolutions Immortal Pill's power could have strengthened your body to the level of a 4-stage Yuan Ko. Even without the Sword Lady, you would still be a 4-stage Yuan Ko. It's just that a few years ago, when you regained control of your body, you forcefully suppressed this power in your subconscious. That's why your body has not been strengthened and is still at the level of an ordinary person. The Xianyuan sword paused and said, Now, the 6 Revolutions Immortal Pill's power is slowly strengthening your body through your blood. In about a month, your body will be strengthened to the level of a 4-stage Yuan Ko. But if you change the blood in your body, you will no longer be able to possess the body of a meteor rank Yuan Ko. You should think carefully about your choice. This old lady can't be bothered with you. Hearing the Xianyuan sword's words, Gohan hesitated for nearly a minute before silently putting the medical pod back into his dimensional pocket. In the 10 days since his purple palace had been sealed, and he had become an ordinary human. Although Gohan behaved carelessly and didn't care, the pain of losing his power lingered in Gohan's heart all the time. Gohan didn't want to experience this feeling of powerlessness again in his life. If he could have the power of a 4-stage Yuan Ko, then even if Gohan's purple palace was sealed, he could still compete with those powerful Yuan Ko. The benefits were self-evident, and Gohan couldn't refuse such a temptation. Forget it. It's just a month of fate. I'll just endure it and it'll be over. Gohan used these words to convince himself. However, when Gohan saw the curious and puzzled sword ladies around him, Gohan felt a headache coming on. How should he explain it to these sword ladies? Who are you? Why are our sword marks in your body? Where did Gohan go? Was he taken away by you? Just when Gohan was thinking about how to explain it to his sword ladies, a golden long sword was pressed against his throat. As long as it slightly pierced downwards, Gohan's throat would immediately be pierced. Chidian, if you put your sword on my neck again, I'll specifically lick your belly button in the future. Gu Xianyuan righteously said such an embarrassing sentence, making Chidian so embarrassed that it immediately put down the sword. Not knowing why, Chidian's sensitive point was its own belly button. When Gohan and Chidian were having sex, as long as Gohan licked Chidian's belly button, Chidian's entire body would leak out and become a pool of mud lying on the bed. This is something only Gohan and I know. Could it be that this woman is really my Gohan? Chidian thought in disbelief. However, when it took a closer look at Gu Xuanyuan's face, it really did look similar to Gohan, except that her skin and temperament had become more feminine. And you, Etienne, you've already secretly drunk that bottle of ergotu. Don't even think about blaming it on me. Xiaoyun. Forget it. I'm not your brother, and I don't want to be your sister. Don't look at me like that. Shurshui. Or should I call you Reina Takasaka? Juzi. Oh right, hurry up and explain to them. When we lived in Lucihua's house, I was like this too. You're the only sword lady who knows the inside story. Please explain it to your sisters. Chi Pin. Why are you looking at me like that? You cheater, if you dare to look at me like that again, don't even think about eating meat anymore. Qingpin's infatuated look made Gohan's heart tremble. This girl's entire attention was focused on Gu Xuanyuan's chest. She looked like a little baby who had been starving for a few days, and she couldn't wait to jump into Gohan's arms and happily breastfeed. Gohan. Qingpin suddenly became infatuated. Qingpin came over and asked a very deep question. Gohan, can Qingpin stay on your chest from now on? Once Gohan's flat chest turned into Gu Xianyuan's mountainous chest, the exclusive nurturing pouch for the poor really didn't need to be hung on his chest anymore. It's okay. Du Yu suddenly jumped onto Gu Xuanyuan's body, and then pinched Gu Xuanyuan's opal, and said with a smile, Qingpin, from now on, your armchair will be upgraded to a fully automatic massage chair. Lord Ling Qingqiu. Lord Ling Qingqiu. Although their bodies were riddled with scars, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming were still very responsible in searching for traces of Gohan. Of course, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming felt that Gohan most likely wouldn't be able to survive. Their biggest hope was to find Gohan's corpse, so that Gohan wouldn't turn into a pile of bones in this wilderness. Captain! Look, aren't there a few people in front? Chu Hanming suddenly discovered a few human figures in the forest in front of them. Be careful. It's very likely that it's a humanoid Yuan Ko. Immediately release your sword lady. Shang Yi immediately said very vigilantly. Chu Hanming nodded, and the two of them simultaneously released their sword lady. You two are Shang Yi and Chu Hanming? When Shang Yi and Chu Hanming released their sword lady, the few human figures had already appeared in front of them, causing Shang Yi and Chu Hanming to be greatly alarmed. Previously, the distance between the two sides was clearly more than a few hundred meters, but in the time it took for the sword lady to be released, the other party had already arrived in front of them. Just from this speed, they were definitely not a match for these few people. What a beautiful woman! After experiencing the initial fear, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming couldn't help but praise in their hearts when they raised their heads to observe the other party. The one who appeared in front of them was actually a peerless beauty that transcended the mortal world. Although she was wearing men's casual clothes and ankle-wrap trousers, dressed like a tomboy, this was still unable to conceal the peerless beauty of this beauty. On the contrary, this man's clothes brought out a different kind of beauty. If I can have a one-night stand with this kind of beauty, then my life will be worth it. Shang Yi couldn't help but think. At the same time, his heart started to pound, as if he had returned to the time when he first met her in high school. Chapter 1081. In addition to the leading beauty, there were 3 other girls behind her, and all of them were exceptionally beautiful. Of course, the appearance of these 3 girls could not be compared to that of the leading girl. The difference between the 2 of them was a full grade. Beauty? How do you know our names? Have we met somewhere before? Could we have met in a dream? Chu Hanming shamelessly leaned forward, wanting to get closer to Gu Xianyuan. I hate men. Get the hell away from me. Gu Xianyuan sent Chu Hanming flying with a kick without any trace of politeness. However, Gu Xianyuan controlled her strength very well. Although Chu Hanming was sent flying, he did not suffer any serious injuries. With a carp flip, he stood up once again. However, he did not dare to get too close to Gu Xianyuan. Young lady, our personal terminals have been damaged, so we can't identify you. Dare I ask, are you humans or Yuan Ko? Shang Yi wasn't like Chu Hanming, who was bewitched by Gu Xuanyuan's beauty, and still remembered to confirm her identity. Watch carefully, Gu Xianyuan said expressionlessly. In the next second, the 3 girls behind her all turned into 3 different treasured swords. One was a blue longsword that was like the sea, one was a blood-red dagger-like short sword, and one was a completely black wooden sword. This was the best evidence. Besides the sword-bearer, who else could turn a living beauty into a treasured sword in an instant? So it's a famous sword-rank sword-bearer. Shang Yi and Chu Hanming were shocked. They didn't expect that the 3 beautiful girls behind this beauty were her sword ladies, and she was actually a famous sword-rank sword-bearer. After the shock, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming couldn't help but become excited. In this desolate forest ruins, there were dangers everywhere, and the original team of 9 only had 3 people left. One of them even had both of his legs crippled. Shang Yi even felt that there was a 95% chance that he would be able to return to Yuzhang City alive. Now, even though he didn't know why a famous sword-rank sword-bearer would appear here alone, there was no doubt that the other party was a famous sword-rank sword-bearer. With the protection of a famous sword-rank sword-bearer, his chances of returning to Yuzhang City alive had greatly increased. How should I address you, my lord? Why would he appear here? You can even call out our names? Shang Yi asked curiously. My name is Gu Xianyuan. Gu Xianyuan coldly spoke up. I am Gohan's elder sister. 10 days ago, Gohan sent me a message, and I came here specifically to save him. So it's Lord Gohan's elder sister, Shang Yi said with sudden realization. Looking carefully, the appearance of this beauty was indeed very similar to that of Gohan. It seemed that they must be biological siblings. 10 days ago was just before she met Gohan. Gohan, whose Zifu was sealed, would certainly think of a way to get his relatives to save her. It was only when he met his own team that he hid his identity and joined. 10 days later, his sister happened to find this place. Everything was reasonable and there was nothing suspicious about it. Oh, Miss Gu Xianyuan, Lord Gohan got into a car accident, and we don't know where he is. The 2 of us have been looking for him for a long time, but we still can't find him. We should hurry and find him. Shang Yi suddenly remembered his original mission and said anxiously, "There's no need to look." Gu Xianyuan waved her hand. "Gohan's injuries are too severe. A normal med bay is unable to treat him. I've already asked my teacher to use the giant void hand to bring him back to Yanjing City for treatment. You guys don't have to look for him anymore," Gu Xianyuan said without thinking. Hearing Gu Xianyuan say this, Shang Yi became even more respectful. To be able to use the giant void hand, then Gu Xuanyuan's teacher must be an immortal sword bearer. Using the giant void hand would consume a lot of energy. If one didn't dote on Gu Xianyuan, an ordinary immortal sword bearer wouldn't bear to use the giant void hand. It seemed that Gu Xuanyuan's backer was as strong as her brother Gohan. "What are you guys talking about? Why don't I understand anything? Who is Gohan? Aren't we looking for Lord Ling Qingqiu?" Gu Xianyuan and Shang Ye's conversation made Chu Hanming, who was at the side, dumbfounded. "Miss Gu, this..." Shang Yi looked at Gu Xianyuan tentatively, meaning to ask if he could tell Chu Hanming about Gohan. "Say it. Gohan is already safe now. There's no need to hide it anymore." Gu Xianyuan nodded her head. Shang Yi then told Chu Hanming everything in detail. Chu Hanming's face was filled with excitement as he shouted, "So Lord Ling Qingqiu is Gohan Lord. I was actually able to stay with my idol for more than 10 days. It's really too blissful. It's a pity that I didn't have time to ask Lord Gohan for an autograph. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have anything else to ask for." Who would have thought that Chu Hanming was actually a fan of Gohan? Actually, from the content of their conversation, it could be seen that Chu Hanming admired Gohan a lot. "Miss Gu, what should we do now?" "We'll listen to you," Shang Yi immediately said after confirming Gu Xuanyuan's identity. He was determined to stick by Gu Xuanyuan's side. Otherwise, only death awaited him. "Of course we have to think of a way to return to Yuzhang City. Before Gohan left, he repeatedly urged me to think of a way to save Yuzhang City. I can't just sit back and do nothing," Gu Xianyuan said indifferently. "Do you still have a hover car? We'll go to Yuzhang City immediately." "What?" Gu Xuanyuan's words made Shang Yi dumbfounded. "Miss Gu, don't you have a hover car with you? Then how did you get here? What kind of joke was this?" Gu Xianyuan was a dignified famed sword-tier sword wielder. She even had an immortal sword-tier sword wielder as her master. How could she not have a hover car? And she still had to ask him for a hover car. Wasn't this a little too funny? Regarding this, Gu Xianyuan also expressed her helplessness. Although the droplet flying car was still on her, Gu Xianyuan did not know how to recharge it. Therefore, the droplet flying car was still unusable. If she had known earlier, she would not have pretentiously given the Yan Huang 3008 to the Yanjing City Traffic Bureau. Otherwise, she would still have a hover car on her. What's so strange about that? Of course I have my own hover car. It's just that I was worried about Gohan's safety. On the way here, I accidentally hit a rock and that hover car was scrapped. Otherwise, I would have found my brother 7 or 8 days ago. Why would I wait until now?" Gu Xianyuan said coldly. "What a pair of siblings! Hover cars are all used for crashing," Shang Yi muttered to himself. Then he spread his hands and said, "Then there's no other way. My hover car met the same fate as Miss Gu's. Right now, the wreckage is still smoking. I really don't have a second hover car on me. What about you? Do you have a hover car?" Gu Xianyuan turned to ask Chu Hanming. "Miss Gu, why are you asking him? He's an ancient sword-rank swordsman. How could he have a hover car?" Shang Yi said with a pained expression. His second-hand hover car had cost him 3 years of savings to buy. Chu Hanming had only been a swordsman for a few years. He probably did not even have enough for his daily expenses. How could he have the money to buy a hover car? But reality slapped Shang Yi in the face. Chu Hanming actually nodded and said, "Yes, I have a hover car here." After saying that, Chu Hanming took out a luxurious hover car from his dimensional pocket. Moreover, the model of this hover car was very familiar to Gohan. It was the Yen Huang 3008 hover car that Gohan had given to someone before. Oh my god! Seeing this hover car, Shang Yi felt terrible. He felt as if he had been cheated. Chu Hanming, you liar! When did you get such a good hover car? You didn't steal it, did you? Oh my god! And it's a Yen Huang 3008. Yesterday, when Lord Gohan asked for a hover car, why didn't you take it out? Now I have to use my poor second-hand hover car. Why are your words so unpleasant? This is a birthday present from my father. I've always been reluctant to drive it. Chu Hanming rolled his eyes at Shang Yi. Besides, I didn't know that Lord Ling Qingqiu was Lord Gohan yesterday. Otherwise, I would definitely have taken this hover car out. With my good car, perhaps Lord Gohan would not have been injured. Hearing Chu Hanming's words, Gu Xianyuan looked at him thoughtfully. Chu Hanming's father had actually given him a Yen Huang 3008 as a birthday present. It seemed like Chu Hanming's family background was not simple. Perhaps he was also a swordsman from a swordsman family. But it should not be an emperor swordsman family. There was not a single emperor swordsman with the surname Chu in Yuzhong City. Alright. There's no time for nonsense. Get in the car. Gu Xianyuan could not be bothered to listen to these two bickering. She directly sat in the driver's seat and stretched out her hand to ask Chu Hanming for the car keys. It was as if the car was her own. Miss Xianyuan, take it. Chu Hanming eagerly placed the car keys in Gu Xianyuan's hand. At the same time, he used his fingerprint to unlock the Yen Huang 3008's AI identification system. This could be considered as completely handing over the driving rights to Gu Xianyuan. Hey! Chu Hanming, are you crazy? These siblings have already crashed 2 cars. Do you want to crash a third? Shang Yi pulled Chu Hanming aside and said, It's fine. Miss Xianyuan is so beautiful. Her driving skills must be very good. I believe in her. Chu Hanming said with a flushed face. He completely ignored Shang Ye's advice and directly sat in the front passenger seat. Sigh. Shang Yi let out a long sigh and also sat in the back seat. This super maglev sports car began to run wildly through the forest at a high speed it had never reached before in its life. F***CK, they are definitely siblings, and the older sister's driving is even scarier than the younger brother's. Feeling that the speed was even scarier than when Gohan was driving, Shang Yi could not help but shrink into a corner and tremble. Wait a minute. Did I forget someone? Shang Yi suddenly thought to himself. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.